Tonight, I need a therapist, and that is almost entirely to blame on All-Star Section 8. Batman reveals its newest villain, Mr. Bloom, and in an unrelated note, Slender Man all of a sudden became a thing again. And Green Arrow gets only one complaint from me, and that is the racists aren't racist enough. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 206 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and it is my birthday this week. I know, I'm a man in my 30s who actually gives a damn about his birthday. I can't say I really do, but what I do give a damn about is that I took off of work this entire week using the birthday as the justification, but also just because why not? I wanted to take it. That being said, because I took off, I'm actually recording this episode much earlier than I usually do. Not like days in advance, but it's also not about to hit midnight as I'm recording this, and that's shocking for me. I never get it done in that. What am I supposed to do with the rest of my day? What do normal people do when they have time off? I guess I'll just start recording another episode. I really have nothing more to do beyond that. What am I supposed to do? Relax? Jesus, that sounds awful. Anyway, I don't have any time to relax on this week, though, because we do not exactly have a light week. It's pretty standard for what it was prior to DCYOU, but pretty heavy for what we've had for the past month. So we have 13 comics coming out this week. I will go ahead through them in alphabetical order real quick. They are Action Comics, All-Star Section 8, Batman, Batman/Superman, Catwoman, Constantine the Hellblazer, Earth 2 Society, Gotham Academy, Green Arrow, Justice League United, New Suicide Squad, Red Hood Arsenal, and Starfire. So that is, of course, not the order of the show. Check the description/show notes to see the order that I decided to put them in this episode, but I had to put them somehow on my little piece of paper here, and it turns out it's alphabetical. Anyway, yeah, don't really have anything else to say up top. Anybody who cares to wish me a happy birthday, I will cherish your name forever. I will send you a Christmas card every year until I die, which at my current rate of how I feel physically is probably going to be like the week after the final episode of this show comes out. I'd say if there's anybody who is currently in the demographic of like early 20s, just stop there. Don't age anymore. Do whatever you have to do. But like as soon as you hit the 30s, it's game over. And I know there's going to be people watching this in their 40s saying, you have no idea. And you're right. I don't. And I hope I never will. So yeah. That turned a strangely fatalistic turn, but regardless, let's get into this week's comics with whatever the hell I decide to put up first. Batman number 43, written by Scott Snyder, art by Greg Capullo. So last issue, we got the name Mr. Bloom, we got the fact that there are seeds that give superpowers, and we ended the issue with Gordon going and revealing that he is Batman to a Bruce Wayne who doesn't remember Jack. So we open up this issue, 9-panel grid of blackness, and then this flower turns around and starts talking to us, saying, oh yes, I come and get what you wanted. I made this for you. It's just for you. And then we see that the inside is some sort of horrific teeth. Cut back over to Gordon talking to Bruce, saying like, I know, I'm Batman, and I need your help. It's very important. And Bruce is like, I don't know anything about that stuff anymore, and I really don't want to talk about it. And Gordon's like, all right, well, just humor me. Here's a little seed thingy. They give people superpowers. It's connected to a guy named Mr. Bloom. You and your company made everything about the Batsuit. Sure, it was bought out by the Powers Corporation, but like, your fingerprints are still all over this. I just want to be able to do a little off-the-book detective work in the Batsuit. And I need your kind of coding know-how and whatever in order to work privately. So can you help me on that? And Bruce gives this whole long backstory about like, oh, this rec center that I work at, is all the kids who show up have to make a brick because the brick will still be here even if they want to leave and come back and yada yada. He turns it around and basically saying like, that ain't who I am no more. I'm not Batman. I'm not the Bruce Wayne that knew anything about Batman. So no. And then Julie Madison comes in and is like, oh my God, Gordon, you have muscles and no mustache. That's weird. You want to stay for dinner? And he's just like, no, I got to get going. And he tucks the seed into Bruce's shirt jacket and just like, hey, you keep an eye on that. I got to go. So we then see outside the rec center is Clark and Alfred. They're just chilling in a car, and Clark's like, I see him in there. It's Bruce, but it's not. And Alfred's like, au contraire. That is the only Bruce Wayne that should have ever existed. And Clark's like, yeah, okay, but like, what happened to the old Bruce? And this is where we get the full breakdown of what happened between Endgame and the beginning of this arc. And the answer is, during the fight with the Joker, he died. Batman, straight up, the cave collapsed on him, and he died. And everyone was holding out hope, saying, like, Batman can't just die. Everyone in the family was thinking he was still fine. But Alfred said that he felt it in his heart the moment it happened. He did die. And then Julie went down and was investigating the caves, trying to find the body. She did end up finding the body and said, hey, Dad, you're going to want to come here. I found it. And as he's driving out there, basically ready to, cremate the body, do whatever needed to happen, lay him to rest, he woke up. And he basically didn't have a scratch on him. He looked fine. And we did some brain scans on him, and it turns out that the Dionysium in the caves got into his system, essentially rewired his brain, completely healing it. He still had his memories and whatnot. That stuff was all intact for the most part, but like some things were lost, including everything to do with Batman, and also like his backstory, his parents dying, all that stuff. Like he remembers the skills and such. He remembers like how to talk and whatever else, but all of the like wired in memories are gone. And Superman's like, okay, but like you told him, right? You couldn't just keep that from him. And Alfred's like, absolutely. Yeah, I sat him down. I told him your parents died in an alley and you worked in the Wayne Enterprises, and you were very heroic in Wayne Enterprises. You became a symbol in Wayne Enterprises, and I promise you, I was working up to opening up the Batcave and showing him everything inside. But right when I was about to, he stopped me and he said, look, I appreciate the story, but I don't feel that sadness. I don't feel like, don't get me wrong, seeing that this kindly couple died in an alley is upsetting, but like, I don't feel anything personal for that. That's not who I am. And Alfred's like, okay, so who are you? And then he disappears for 2 days into his room. And when he comes back out, he's like, my mom worked in schools and my dad worked in the hospital. And I feel like I want to do something in that route. I want to help people. And honest to God, swear on my life, Mr. Kent, in walked Julie Madison, who worked down at the rec center, and she just wanted to stop in and check on Bruce. I swear to God, that's how it played out. And Clark's like, okay, all right, fair enough. But you got to tell him he was Batman. And Alfred's like, no. And he's like, all right, well then I'm going to tell him he's Batman. And Alfred goes, no. And he pulls out Kryptonite ring and says, look, you telling him to be Batman now, after he's lost all the memories, the drive to be Batman, all of his skills and talents, his detective work that he learned before, it's gone. You'd be sending him out there to die. He is not Batman anymore. He is Bruce Wayne. And it'd be the same as me strapping this ring on you and telling you to fly. It ain't gonna happen. And Superman's like, okay, you can show me all the images of the brain and all that, but he is Batman. From a meta perspective, he's always going to end up being Batman again. And Alfred's like, let me show you something real quick. All right, let me, you want to see Bruce's brain? Let me show you something. He brings him down to the machine that Bruce made that essentially would allow them to reinsert the Bruce Wayne memories into endless amounts of clones and make sure that there is always a Batman for ad infinitum. And he's like, look, he made this machine, but he didn't finish it. He never even came close to finishing it. And it's because he was never meant to live forever. You see, Batman died, Bruce Wayne came back. Can we just treat this as the gift of the universe that it is? And Yeah, Clark's just kind of just left like, Alfred, come on, that's not the way it's supposed to be. He's like, let me have my dream, damn it. So we cut over to Gordon, who's off the grid. Julie's helping him. They're not in the full big bunny suit, but he is in his stealth suit. Turns out that he's got some sort of ability in his suit to retract the molecules in glass so that he can pull a window out without smashing it. They make a Spider-Man joke, but they drop in, and it turns out that this is the warehouse where the devil pigs worked in. And it's the only lead they've got on Mr. Bloom because the devil pigs were people who were getting seeds from him last issue. So we see that they do a whole thing with like hatcheries and frozen fish or whatever like that. And there's a shark in a giant aquarium fish tank thing with horns on it, which just horrifies Batman. And it's just like, okay, all right, let's see what we get. And they pull up a computer, and they do have images on Mr. Bloom. And he's a guy with a flower on his mask. And he's just like, okay, all right. So who is he? And then a voice from the back says, he's a friend, and he makes us all see things. You'll see. And it's a devil pig. He's got a gun trained on Batman. And he's like, hey, I want to show you things too. Why don't you let me come a little closer? So we got a whole bunch of other devil pigs come out of the woodworks. They've got guns trained on Batman. They say, hey, Batman, you ever seen RoboCop before? We're going down that route. And he's like, no. And he pulls out his Batarang gun, starts firing, but he doesn't have enough Batarangs to take out all the guys. So he ducks behind a desk as they start shooting. They end up shooting towards the aquarium, which does not shatter. However, Gordon's like, okay, but I'm going to make this work. So he takes one more shot. They fire off more shots. They miss some more. The aquarium shatters. A couple of the sharks start biting these random guys, and Gordon rides one of them out to safety. So now that all the other guys are taken out, he's like, yeah, whatever. I hate RoboCop anyway. So one of them is still up. One of them is still working, and he presses a secret trapdoor button that drops Batman down into a secret underground furnace that is meant to dispose of evidence. And temperatures start rising fast. It's 200 degrees. Julie's like, I'm coming in. I'm going to get you out of there. But someone smashes her head into the glass of the van that she's working out of, and she's not responding. And Batman can't get out of this either. Cut over to Bruce and Julie. Bruce dozes off looking over Duke Thomas's file because he still has something against Bruce, and Bruce cannot figure out what it is. And we see that Duke manages to sneak in after they leave and steal the Mr. Bloom seed that was left over from Gordon stopping by. And then we cut over to one final scene where Penguin is meeting up with Mr. Bloom, and Bloom's just like, this one's for you. You can have it for free. And Penguin's like, what kind of business is this, man? You just give stuff away for free and you like don't ask anything for it? So what's up? What are you selling? He's like, oh, I'm not selling anything, but like this seed will work for you and your body, but I'm not giving it to you. Let me be clear about that. And he's like, oh, what? What? Do I not have enough money for you? And he's like, no, it's not about money, but you're just not a part of this. I made this for you, but I'm not giving it to you. And he's like, yeah, all right. So I've heard about you. You're making a garden out of all these superheroes. It is a weird thing, whatever. But the thing is, and then a guy just shoots Mr. Bloom in the face, one of Penguin's goons. He's just like, you're not building a garden. You're a bunch of weeds. And us normal people, us normal Gothamites, we like ripping the weeds out of the garden, no problem. And then all of a sudden, all of his henchmen start getting stabbed in various ways, including Penguin. He gets stabbed through the stomach as well. And we see that Mr. Bloom is not just a normal dude. He's frickin' Slender Man with super long congealed fingers. And he's like, oh, well, the thing about weeds, Mr. Cobblepot, is that we grow very fast. So, yeah, that's the issue. I like it. I vaguely remember Mr. Bloom as a character, and I like the creepiness of him. I like this idea that he is kind of just outside the realm of, he does this stuff as a force of nature, not because he wants anything in return. Maybe there is some deep motivation of like, oh, I want to see Gotham burn or whatever like that, but it is with this idea that he is not human. He is something else. And this first real appearance of him going up against Penguin, first off, theoretically killing Penguin, obviously that doesn't stick, but like, it makes him something not to be trifled with. Add on to that, I like all the extra stuff of Alfred's motivation, saying like, I did almost tell him about Batman, but he didn't want to hear it. So what am I supposed to do about that? So yeah, it's a solid issue all around. I think I'm going to give this one, I'll give it an 8. It's missing a little something on Gordon's side. I don't really know what I'm looking for. It just doesn't have it to bump it up to an 8.5 for me, but it is still a very solid issue. So 8s all around. Action Comics number 43, written by Greg Pak, art by Aaron Kuder. So last issue we had a bunch of police marching on, I forget what the name of the town was. They don't really bring it up, but a tiny little community that celebrates Superman. Superman's off fighting against some shadow monsters. He shows up and tries to save the day. Ends up punching the main police officer. So we pick up on that. Jimmy Olsen is snapping pictures and Superman's like, yeah, I don't know how things got this far. This is not a good look. And we see that the police officer just goes flying away because he got punched by Superman. Everyone in the crowd's like, oh my god, what? And he's just like, But then the police officer starts laughing and he gets up and his face is like split open, but inside you see shadowy goop. And Superman's like, oh, thank God. He's not a human being. He's a shadow monster. Whew. I almost had to explain that one. So he starts yelling out. The police officer's like, oh, I knew I could get you to break, blah, blah, blah. And the shadow monster starts attacking Superman, and he goes after one of the other police officers there who's wearing a mech suit, a kind of RoboCop looking thing, and he drains the energy from it, charges himself up, gets himself all beefy or whatever, and he's like, ha ha ha, now I can take you on, Superman. So he starts attacking Clark. In runs that guy Dante from last issue with a baseball bat. Of course, he doesn't do anything. He just gets punched in the face and is immediately knocked out. But Superman's like, oh no, it knows it can target my friends and the people I care about. That's how I can really lose it here. So he tries to toss the shadow monster away. The other cops are like, our boss is a shadow monster. I don't think we should be taking orders from him. And then the boss is like, nothing. I've always been a shadow monster. Literally nothing has changed. Go and kill these people and take them all out or whatever. So we see Lee, the one woman who is all buddy-buddy with Superman now, jumps in, uses a baseball bat upside the officer's head, and she gets stabbed in the shoulder because of it. And that's just enough to piss Superman off. He's like, nope, this is too much. This is what we're doing now. So he tackles the officer down to the ground. We see the other officers, the ones with the mech suits and all that, come up with guns drawn. Seems like they're aiming at Superman. And they might very well be, but we see one of the other officers comes in, Officer Mizoguchi, and tackles Superman down to the ground. And now that Superman's out of the way, the Shadow Monster officer's like, oh, thank God, other officers, I knew you'd do your job and shoot Super... And then they all just shoot him. So Jimmy's catching all the images of that. Apparently they're live uploading online. The mayor's office sees it and just like, yeah, we got millions of people on Olsen's website. They're all seeing this. We got to do damage control and whatnot. It's like, okay, what's the word on the lead officer, Binghamton? It's like, oh, he disappeared. Also, where did the SWAT team get those weapons? It's like, no idea. So one of the officers gets a call from the mayor. Officer passes it over to Superman, and the mayor's like, hey, Superman, sorry about that. I genuinely have no idea what is going on in this situation. I'm just finding out about it now. But what we can tell is that you are kind of a target for everything going on here. So we need you to get away from these people so that we can like properly take care of them. Superman's like, your team was just about to kill them all. I don't think you're going to properly take care of them. Mayor's like, I told you I don't know anything about that. I'm just trying to take care of my city. And Superman's like, yeah, so am I. Click. And he's like, oh yeah, that felt good. I'm glad I did that one. So he goes over, talks to Lee, and just like, hey, you're hurt. Like, you know, you can't be jumping in like that and all that stuff. Hands her a piece of his cape to wrap up the wound and all that. And we basically just see like, okay, we got to figure out what it is we're doing here. Clark wants to take a second, go back to his apartment and just breathe for a minute, try to sort things out. Lee's making the point of saying, hey, yeah, everyone else thought it was like a party beforehand, before things got serious. Now they know the real stakes here. That's a good thing. They're going to have to step up. But as they get up to Clark's old apartment, turns out that it was broken into after like police and stuff got in there. And it's been ransacked, vandalized, spray paint on the ground that says, go home, alien. And Lee and Jimmy seem to care a lot more than Clark does. Clark just kneels down to a broken picture frame and pulls the photo out of it. We don't see what it is quite yet, but we cut to the next day where Superman's giving a speech to everybody on the block. He's like, hey, look, y'all did great. I'm really happy for you. I'm proud of everything you did. Stop it. This is going to get so much worse. I do not have the powers to protect all of you anymore, and I cannot keep you all safe. But if you're going to stay, because I know I can't convince all of you, you're all going to have to protect yourselves and one another. You're all going to have to step up and be Superman now. And Dante's like, yeah, I'm Dante Superman. And everyone else is like, yeah, woo, we're Superman. And then we see the photo he pulled out was a photo of him with Mom and Pa Kent. He's a kid in the picture. He's all scratched out by whoever vandalized everything, but he just folds the picture, so it's just Mom and Pa, and he's happy about it. We then cut over to City Hall, where it seems that police officers who worked with Binghamton are being called in one by one. We get Officer Petruzzelli, who is talking to her coworkers like, man, sure, he might have been a shadow monster, but he was still a cool guy. And after all, being a shadow monster, is that really any worse than being Kryptonian? Like, it's all kind of just alien monster stuff, right? And everyone's like, oh, okay, so you're on Shadow Monster's side. Got it, cool. So she gets called into the mayor's office and is immediately telling the mayor, like, yeah, I don't really want to be here. I think you're just looking for a reason to fire me or like investigate me, right? And she's like, oh, okay, you went through this stuff with Binghamton? You were a friend of his? And it's like, yeah, he was a good officer. And she's like, cool, awesome. We think we have a good role for you moving forward. And we see as the doors close, the shadows start creeping in and all this stuff. All of a sudden, outside the door, we hear gunfire. Petruzzelli's firing her gun into the room as she sprints out saying, Jesus Christ, they're all shadow monsters. Every last one of them. Everyone's got to get out of here. And we see a bunch of them turn into crazy ass shadow monsters, and they are stopped in their tracks by Superman, who's come in and says, hey, don't worry. We're all in this together. It's fine. It's good. It's a fine enough issue. I will say, last issue left me with this, I don't know, this feeling of early Morrison Superman, where it was this guy, he's going against the system, he doesn't care about the legality of it, and he's just like, I'm going, even if they are well-regarded people, if they're doing bad things, I'm going to stop them. And to an extent, I kind of was getting that from the police officer thing. I thought that's the way that we were going there. To say that he was just another shadow monster, it doesn't make it a bad plot, but it changes the trajectory. It's no longer now this thing of, oh, anybody can be corrupt and like you have to stop corruption, whatever. It's, no, the bad people are shadow monsters. But we are still fighting City Hall. We are still fighting these entrenched forces of power. So it's a similar storyline. It's just a very clear differentiation of what we're doing with it. It's not bad, just different than what I was expecting. So I'm going to say this one is a... I'm between a 7.5 and an 8. I'll give it the 7.5, but it's growing on me, and I think that I could really enjoy this arc depending on how much of this is human nature can actually be bad in some extent, and you do have to fight against this because it's not just going to be monsters, and how much is it is just monsters. So we'll see where we get there. Justice League United number 12, written by Jeff Parker, art by Travel Foreman. So last issue, we got onto this strange fleshy island thing with Mara, Poison Ivy, Etrigan, Swamp Thing, and Equinox. That's her name. And we weren't given much of a backstory about it. It's just happening. But Swamp Thing ended up being swallowed up by the island, and everyone else is like, oh, we're all going to die. Swamp Thing was by far and away the heaviest hitter, so we're screwed. So we see that this thing is start growing teeth and mouths and stuff like that. Ivy is just completely in over her head. She's like, why am I even here? I can't connect with the green. Nothing's working. What is going on? And Etrigan's like, oh, I know why we're brought here. We're in hell. At least that's the reason I'm here. So as we continue on forward, we see that the island starts generating these big globby pustules that are like bubbles to chase after them, and they make the equivalence that they are essentially mites on the surface of this creature, and therefore this is the antibodies coming after them. So Etrigan lets off some hellfire to try to kill them. Ivy's like, yes, cook them all, but it doesn't seem to do anything. And Mara gets brought into one of them. She gets absorbed, and it's like, oh god, she was our second biggest hitter, we're screwed. But then she starts laughing and all of a sudden breaks out. And it turns out that the internals of all these globby pustule things is water. Great, Mara can control water, so she just starts popping all of them as they approach. So once she's popped enough, she takes the excess water, builds a bubble around the group, and is like, okay, this is a line of defense, they can't pierce this. And they turn to Equinox and say, we need to know the full plan now. We can't do anything based off of this half-baked, go in and we'll tell you later stuff. You tell us everything now. And Equinox is like, I promise you all of this was part of the plan. And she says, whose plan? And this is where we flash around, back, it's hard to say, but we go over to Steelworks, where Alana Strange is talking to Henry Steele. And as they're listing off names, the computer is just saying, like, Adam Strange was a professor of anthropology. The Justice League files show that Adam and Alana Strange, blah, blah, blah. And they go through the whole backstory, and Alana's like, could you turn that off? That's really distracting. And he's like, sorry, this is how I pretend to know everything. So, turns out that they were trying to fight, and by they, and we get this across a couple different things, including Stargirl talking to Robot Man of the Doom Patrol, trying to convince him to join in, but it's told across a couple of different things, where turns out that there were some anomalies, and it was distorting reality, so Justice United went in, they wanted to check it out, but only light was allowed to get out, so they were trapped. They couldn't get out once they got in. And Adam Strange said, hey, I've got a teleportation thing. I'll teleport out and figure out a way to free the rest of you. So we boosted up the Zeta Beam, but it turns out that whatever is in the Zeta Beam caused the anomaly to essentially rupture and destroy itself, freeing everybody except for Adam Strange, who was put into some weird state of non-corporeal being. And as Stargirl explains, is that the Zeta Beam is essentially part of a larger flow in the universe that the Thanagarians just managed to tap into the very outside surface of and allowed for their teleportation. Now Adam Strange is in the thick of it, and they can't figure out how to get him out. But from the viewpoint of this larger outside the universe, Adam is able to see essentially Dr. Manhattan style the entire timeline and see how different things piece together, and that they can destroy these anomalies, these weird fleshy things coming in, via certain specific combinations of superheroes showing up at those locations where they arrive at, which is why we had the strange thing of Etrigan and Poison Ivy and Mara. Everyone has their part to play. Alana is able to, as she uses the Zeta Beams, hear Adam talking. So that's how they communicate. That's how they're able to hear about like all this stuff going on. So Robot Man's telling Stargirl like, okay, sure, I guess I'm in, but like I'm on Doom Patrol and we might have a book later, so I'll be over there if you need me. And she's like, cool, thanks, I'll hit you up. So apparently they're relaying all this inside the bubble as well. And Mara's like, okay, so we're going to be trapped here unless we destroy this thing, and we don't know how to destroy it because the plan is just that we showed up and we'll figure it out. Yeah. And Etrigan's like, I have had to deal with this so many times over my extremely long lifespan where people with the power of prophecy get in way over their heads, and we're all just kind of doomed because of it. But we see Poison Ivy is over at the edge of the bubble, and she sees a little plant growing, and she's like, Swamp Thing's still alive. He's still in there. I can hear him. Something's going on, but like I can't fully tap in to hear what he's saying. I need more power. I need to be stronger. And Equinox is like, I have the power of the seasons. I can use springtime. Let's do it. I can boost your power. So she boosts Poison Ivy's power to reach into the small amount of green that's here, reaches out to Swamp Thing, and he's like, Swamp Thing, you cool? And he's like, I am. I'm one with the island. Before you ask, the island is not able to be reasoned with. It is thinking in its own thing. It doesn't need us to do anything. It's just basically looking for survival, and right now it is reaching to the bottom of the lake bed looking for methane and is planning to rise up out of the ocean. And Poison Ivy recants this to everyone else, and Mara's like, okay, it's pulling up methane. It's a very volatile gas. And Etrigan gives us the Latin breakdown of the word volatile, which apparently way back when has a direct meaning of it can fly. It's flight. So we see that this island of fleshy mass raises up out of the ocean and starts going into the air. And Mara's like, why is it doing that? It seemed pretty comfy in the ocean. And Mara is told that it is because she used the water against the island, it now views water as a threat. So it's trying to get away from the ocean. So at that point, Poison Ivy loses her connection to Swamp Thing. And she's like, all right, that's all I got. He's in there, but like, we don't know what else to do. And at that point, Equinox is like, look, can you shield people from like a major blast? Because like, I think that we've exposed this thing's fleshy underside. We can take it out now. So Mara's like, all right, I'll make a layer with like so pressurized that it's steel. It'll protect us. I'll just keep popping balloons. Etrigan, you chill out here. I'm going to go out and I'm going to handle this. And Etrigan's like, wait, what? So Equinox says that, like, yes, my power, I've got this blast with the fleshy underside, I can take care of it. And so she blasts off her energy, it does nothing. And she's like, ah, crap, that should have worked. But then as we go back up to the top, Etrigan's like, yeah, no, I haven't been used in this plan yet. This is clearly my time to shine. You need to be able to bring me down and around, because I guess Etrigan isn't able to fly. I thought for sure he could, but regardless, Equinox drops him off on the underside. He uses his Hellfire Blast and just blasts the entire island. In the meantime, somewhere in there, we also get that Poison Ivy wakes up from her haze of being in the green, and Mara's like, oh, hey, you were having some weird fever dream or something. Also, you have some really unresolved feelings about Batman, apparently. So the entire island goes up in flames. It explodes. The anomaly's taken care of. Adam Strange, watching from the Netherrealm, is like, oh, did I know it would work for certain? Did I know exactly how it would happen? I feel like it. I feel like looking back on it now, it was inevitable. It had to happen this way. But like, I can't say for sure that I know it's going to work. But I also don't know that everyone's making it out intact. And we see Animal Man and Alana Zeta beam in, they teleport over to the area. Mara and all them come out of the water, and Poison Ivy is like, hey, Swamp Thing gave up his life for this. Like, he was part of the island, you blew up the island. I might be able to save him with this little piece of flesh that I saved of like his skull, but I can't guarantee anything. So please don't send me back to Batgirl to be put in jail. I need to go deal with this. And so she just walks off, and everyone's like, are we cool with letting her go? And it's like, yeah, it's probably for the best. So Jason Blood walks up and he's like, yeah, you guys just started talking. Etrigan doesn't really care about talking, so he's out. Good job, everyone. Hopefully you've realized the ugly truths that you're going to have to go through at this point. And then Mara comes up and is just like, hey, you promised you'd tell me where Aquaman is, because in my book, I don't like him right now. And they're like, yeah, we'll drop you off where we last saw him. It's all good. So they mention, like, yeah, are we cool with leaving Poison Ivy out on the good? Like, just free to go? And it's like, yeah, Batgirl's probably busy, and either way, she's needed for our next task. And so the last page that we get here is Batgirl is outrunning Blockbuster, who is just crashing through a bunch of buildings, and she's like struggling to find something in her belt to deal with him. And then all of a sudden Stargirl comes in, immediately knocks over Blockbuster and just says, hey Batgirl, we've never met, but I follow you on Instagram. I've got a Justice League mission for you. And that's the issue. So yeah. Also, sorry, this wasn't in my initial way of reading it. The return of a long-lost DC hero in Warzone. Who are they bringing back? Who knows? Yeah. I don't know. It's weird, I guess is what I'm saying. I actually really like this a lot more than what we were previously doing in Justice League United, because it felt to me like the Legion was just complicating things in that last arc. So I really wasn't a fan of the Legion in that. But this one, it's also weird because it's doing theoretically a Justice League Unlimited sort of thing, where it's like we have all these heroes that we can enlist and we're going to use them depending on what the situation calls for. And I like that as a concept, but you're kind of just pinning on the team on top of this, you know? Like the larger thing here is they're the ones who can interact with Adam Strange. They were the originals, and so it feels wrong not to have them around. But at the same point, like, what did Animal Man do here? What did Alana Strange do here? And the answer is nothing, but they're part of the book, so they kind of got to be around in a way. And I feel like you would have been better off to just cancel this book and start up a new one. Another JLA, another Justice League Unlimited, anything you want to call it. But like, having this be Justice League United does feel like this book has gone through so many different transitions as to what it was going to be that it doesn't really have its own identity anymore. We start off with the idea of it's Justice League Canada. Then that's kind of gone as we go into space and do Justice League plus the Legion. And now we're doing this thing here where it's, oh, well, it's actually just whoever wants to join the team is on the team. And at this point, I kind of get why it wasn't collected in trade paperback. It does feel like it just wasn't justified. I don't know who's really reading this at this point, but it's not a bad book. It just doesn't have an identity to it. Any issue can be totally separate from any other one, and that's just not good for keeping readers on board. So yeah, I think this one, it's not a bad issue, but the direction it's taken is definitely a turn for the weirder, and I would argue to say the worst. So I'll say a 7. It's still a fine issue, but we only got like 3 more issues, I think, left in this series, and then it gets either canceled or ends. So we'll see where we end up, but I'm just not that impressed by the direction it's taking while still keeping the same title as before. Green Arrow number 43, written by Benjamin Percy, art by Patrick Zircher. So last issue we had Green Arrow getting captured by the mastermind, Mr. Zim, who runs the Panopticon program, and we see that it has been implemented throughout Seattle. Things are bad. Pennytown is worse for wear, and things are like going up in flames and whatever else like that. But we see that the one major thing that is going on with the people of Seattle in Green Arrow's absence, because some time has passed, is everyone is wearing their hoods, and in an effort to hide themselves from the Panopticon, but also as a conscious effort of Green Arrow's gone, we are all now the new Green Arrows. We're all wearing our own hoods and enforcing our own laws. And we see a press conference with the police departments, basically like all the press are saying, hey, this seems to be wildly unpopular, and also like crime has not gone down. If anything, it has gone up in many situations that may be directly linked to the Panopticon. And the mayor's just like, the chief, not the mayor. He's like, I don't think that there's any relation to that. And besides, we got to go through the entire evaluation process before we even think of discontinuing. Look, we got a lot of money for this, so we're going to keep doing it. Okay, this is how this is. So we cut over to Henry's place, and Emmy is showing up and it's just like, hey, my brother's missing, you got to help me find him. And he's like, Green Arrow goes missing all the time. That's like every other Wednesday for him, no big deal. So he tries to ignore Emmy because Oliver specifically told him to ignore Emmy and not get her involved in any of this. And Emmy's like, you are the kind of loser who stays in a state of immaturity and never actually grows up. And Henry's like, and you're the kind of kid who acts like so much of an adult, it's not even fun anymore, and it's all like a grim game of make-believe. And she's like, you want make-believe? Fine. Here's the big bad wolf. And he brings in the wolf from the previous issues. Had a name, I believe. George. Wouldn't have remembered that. So George then lunges at Henry and stops right before it attacks, I guess scaring Henry into joining in. So we cut over to Oliver, who is still alive. He's being dangled by Zim. And Oliver's like, okay, I'm still alive, so you clearly want something from me. What is it? And he's like, money, funding. Of course. Get me money from Queen Industries. Like, yes, I know I have the initial startup funds right now, but once I go and like make my stuff worldwide, I'm going to need a lot more money and it's going to be a lot harder to come from. So gimme. And we cut over to his people who are working for him. And all of them have tattoos that are very white supremacist imagery. You have people with like 1488 and like Norse symbols and stuff like that. But the one that gets me is that all of them have a swastika. However, I guess DC didn't want to do that. So they changed it. So now instead of a swastika, it's a money symbol. Like they bridged two of the lines to make it into the dollar sign symbol. But they have all the other white supremacist... Whatever. I'll get to it at the end. But continuing the plot, Zim's just like, yeah, I got a bunch of racists to work for me because they're racist. They're easy to manipulate. But I don't actually think it's a race thing. I think it's anybody who is in the lower dredges of society. Those people need to be purged because we've been propping them up for too long. Hashtag no welfare state. And he's like, oh, God, I'm going to beat that smirk off you. So we go to a truck that is loaded to the brim with guns, and it's a white supremacist who's selling to a black guy. And he's just like, all right, and where'd you say these came from? And then all of a sudden the doors are blowing off of it. We get that bleached guy who comes in, who is the epitome of super racist. And the white supremacist is like, hey, man, we're on the same side. I'm with you. And he's like, no, you're arming the enemy. You're absolutely not on our side. And so he claims it's just business, but then the bleached guy shoots him in the head. We then cut back over to Henry, who's like, okay, I followed wind currents and satellites and yada yada. This is the place where the hive of panopticons definitely is. I have given you some EMP arrows and this one special arrow that will inject silicon into the robot so that way I can hack into it and reverse all of the panopticons at once. So have fun with that. So Emmy takes a boat out. There's a bunch of killer whales, which I don't know if that's native to the coast of Washington, but whatever. She drives out on this boat to the island. A bunch of panopticon drones spot her. She's got George with her as well. George starts howling as they approach. So one of the drones attacks her, manages to grab her by the foot. She sends an EMP arrow up into it, but it drops her down to the sea. She's still being dragged down by the drone that's wrapped around her foot, and George manages to pull her up and out to safety onto the coast. And she's like, oh, you will get all the treats in the doggy world. So Zim presents Oliver with a computer that's directly interfacing with Queen Industries, and he's like, dude, I have safeguards against this. If I try to move like more than X amount of money over the computer, it requires a direct signature that like is notarized. Like that's built into the system. I can't get around that. You failed. This isn't going to work. And he's like, oh, then I'm going to have to pop your head off with this drone. And then in comes the bleached guy, and he holds a gun to Zim's head and says, hey, I did some digging, and it turns out that all of this began with a drug lab and a prostitution ring, and like this isn't what we're about. You've caused crime. How dare you? You're part of those bottom dredges. And Zim says, no. That was just for startup funds. I needed to be able to do that in order to make enough crime that the panopticons became necessary. It's all part of it. And Bleach guy doesn't care. He's like, nah, there's no more we're out of this now. And Zim's like, the soldier never understands what the general does, but he needs to follow orders anyway. So the panopticon drops Oliver, goes over, grabs hold of the Bleach guy, and just tears him limb from limb. So he's gone now. Zim wipes his glasses clean of the blood, goes to taunt Oliver some more to continue on, but then he realizes, oh crap, wait, yeah, I just had to release him. He's clearly now made his way down the hallway, beating up a bunch of more racists. And he looks around the corner and says, oh God, oh no. And then we see Emmy approaching a cave. Oliver comes running out of it, and Emmy's like, what is it? What's going on? And he's like, run, get out of here. So a bunch of panopticons are now coming out. They're all attacking at once. Oliver drops an EMP arrow from Emmy, which manages to take out a bunch, but it's not the end of them. But they do, in the interim, take this Trojan horse arrow, the silicon arrow, jam it in. Lights turn green to imply that it is actively being hacked. But it turns out that as they're doing this, Henry's on the toilet. So he's not immediately hacking. He needs to finish up there first. So we see that back in the town, a bunch of Panopticons are about to attack this man who's just, he's black and he's walking home from the grocery store, but I guess he's a threat to the Panopticons, so they're about to attack him. But then they turn green, they blow up each other, and wouldn't you know it, the day is saved. And we get Oliver looking out at the coast saying like, yeah, I realize that I can't do this alone. I need to work with a team. And the Panopticon that had Zim in it is now being dragged to the bottom of the ocean, and there's killer whales there, so he's being killed by a blackfish. Get it? Irony. Okay. All right. Here's the thing. The general issue overall, I like. I do think it is a well-done thing. It's got some social commentary. That's what I expect from Green Arrow. I'm down for it. I like the social commentary here. Let me talk about pulling your punches. Look, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just because, like, it's been 10 years and nothing good has been done about white supremacy in the meantime. But, like, the fact that these guys have tattoos of, like, Norse symbols and 1488 and all these other whistles for white supremacists and racists and stuff like that. And editorial or art, I'm not going to specifically say it's editorial, but editorial is coming back and saying you can't have a swastika. And they turn it into a money symbol instead. Like, at that point, don't have anything. You know, go in with an airbrush in Photoshop and just get it. I get it's harder than adding 2 black lines, but, like, it feels like you're a Saturday morning cartoon at that point, where it's like, oh, no. These guys aren't Nazis. They're capitalists that also have 14. It's like, shut up. Just do it. Don't pull your punches. If you're going to do it, if you're going to have something to say, just say it. So, yeah, it's a minor gripe that is more of a laugh than anything else, but it just, I don't know, it really annoyed me to see that there, because it's such a thing where it didn't have to exist. So I'm going to say overall this issue was very well done. I like the pacing of it. Art style is also great. I really have nothing bad to say about Patrick Zircher on this. I'm going to say this is a solid 8. It probably would have been an 8.5. Well, no, I wouldn't have even thought about it if they didn't have it be the money symbol. Probably would have still been an 8, but it would have been a more enthusiastic 8 if I didn't have to sit there and try to tell you not to pull your punches. So yeah, that's whatever. Green Arrow. Batman Superman number 23, written by Greg Pak, art by Ardian Syaf. So last issue, we had a whole thing of Superman and Batman trying to deal with the underground people, trying to get an artificial sun, and Superman didn't like the way that Batman was going about it, because, again, Batman is James Gordon at this point. So we see that Superman is hitched a ride on one of the giant burrowing beasts of the underground, and he's just moving miles beneath the city. Batman's calling into Clark saying, hey, what you doing, man? Where you going? What are you thinking? Because you are literally mortal at this point. Do we need to make that clear? And he's like, yeah, no, don't worry about it. I'm going to go check this out. So he tells Batman to shut up because he's starting to approach the internal place, and Lord Ukur is there saying, hey, didn't work out this time, but I got some more plans soon for Subterranea. So Superman says, look, he's planning something. You stay up there. I don't want you in on this because you've messed it up enough. I'm out. And so he turns off his communicator, and Batman's left up top just like, oh, man, you're going to get killed or you're going to start a war. Something's going to happen. We also see that Superman comes across the entire area down there. It's all being lit by fires that are giving off smoke and all this extra stuff. So clearly they just wanted some light. And Superman's like, that's all they want. I'm going to find out a way to try to make this right for them. So we see Batman up top is left with Lucius Fox, and they're transporting the artificial sun out into the ocean so that it's away from any sort of life in case something goes wrong with it, because it has a several 100-mile blast radius. And Gordon's like, hey, Lucius, look, I'll go with the sun. I'll make sure it's taken care of. But, like, what do you think of Superman? And he's like, what, you mean all the stuff about, like, how he's Clark Kent and how he's, on the run and stuff right now. It's like, yeah, but can we trust him? And he's like, I feel like Superman generally makes good decisions, but this is an extremely dangerous thing. The question is, we literally made this extremely dangerous thing. Do you think you can trust us? So we cut back to Superman. He's scaling down the side of a mountain. Or internal mountain, cave, whatever you want to call it, scaling down a wall. And he's thinking like, no, if I slip, I'm actually going to die. Like, this is stupid. I'm barely managing to hold on here. But he does manage to get to a point where he can rest on a ledge. And he's like, I don't even know how I'm supposed to begin this. I should call someone in the league. But like, I still feel like Superman has to be the leader of the league. What am I supposed to do? And he looks down and he sees a skeleton with an old subterranean outfit on it. And he's like, all right, that'll work. So he puts it on. Now he's in disguise, and he's like, yeah, it feels weird. I've got a secret identity again. That's crazy. But as soon as he gets down, all of a sudden, some subterranean, they look like horses, but just think like dehydrated horses. They start attacking. Superman sees that a bunch of humans, actual human people wearing Gotham prison jumpsuits are down here, and they're all running away from these horses. So Superman jumps in just like, I've got to stop them. I was hoping I could sneak around, but that ain't going to happen here because saving lives is more important. He sees a young boy who's just sitting on the field, terrified and paralyzed, and so he jumps in, protects the kid from getting run over. And as the horses get all corralled up, the kid runs over to his mom, and the mom, her name is something, they say it later on. Apparently she is from the Gotham prison, and Superman points this out like, oh, hey, man, is this your kid? And she's like, yeah. Are you with Dawn Command? And he's like, yes, the outfit says I'm from Dawn Command. That is what I am and all that. So we get a little bit of an explanation here that the horses are usually fine, but they just got a little bit spooked or whatever. But the reason that there are humans down here is that they said the stuff that went on in Gotham, I'm assuming Endgame, but it might have been Batman Eternal. Because of the stuff in Gotham prison basically had a crack in it that allowed them to come down into the tunnel, join Subterranea of their own free will, and then they have slowly smuggled their families down here. And it turns out that this woman, she was basically just hit by 3 strikes of her boyfriend selling pot out of their apartment. She's not actually like a bad person at all, but there's no life for her up top anymore, so she's willing to start one down here. And she basically says like, yeah, we little people, we have to try to make do. I'm sure you don't understand that. And he's like, oh, I understand it quite a bit. And then he basically says, yeah, my task, I was sent here by Dawn Command to help out however I can. And turns out that they use the droppings of these horse beast creatures as fuel for the fires, and obviously that's not an ideal way to live, but that's what Uker has promised, is that he'll get an artificial sun so they don't have to keep doing this anymore, and they will be able to live here protected by the underground, free to live however they choose. So at that point they're saying, yeah, he's still got a plan, even if it failed the first time, and we're all going to be kings and queens down here. We're all going to be taken care of. In walks another subterranean guy who's like, hey, wait a minute, let me scan your armor, new guy. And he scans the armor. Turns out it's the armor of a guy named Axel, A-K-S-E-L. And he's been missing for months, to which Superman says, I got lost in the caves. And then he just gets punched in the stomach. Just like, yeah, all right, sure. So he gets dragged away. We cut back up to Metropolis, and we see that Jim Gordon is talking to Perry White, basically saying, hey, you knew Superman. I'm just asking as a police officer, not as Batman or anything like that, but like, what's your feelings on Clark Kent now? How do you trust him? And Perry's like, no, I don't trust him. Screw that guy. He put every single one of my employees at risk because he wanted to play pretend being a reporter. And Gordon points out justly, like, didn't he get nominated for a few Pulitzers? Like, he was actually a good reporter, though, right? And Perry's like, that's not the point. The point is that, like, he's look, how would you feel if one of your cops was running around and turns out they were actually Batman? And Gordon's like, that would suck. And he's like, yeah, exactly. If you want to work with him, I strongly suggest you don't. So Gordon leaves the Daily Planet, and he immediately recognizes he's being tailed by Lois Lane. He tricks her into revealing herself, and he's like, what do you want? What's going on here? And she's like, hey, look, I'm just looking for the story. I'm following where this goes. If it ends up being that whatever story this is would end up hurting people, I don't publish it. That's my rule. And Gordon's immediately like, I don't feel like, knowing what I know what happened with Superman, you always follow that rule. And she's like, I do my best, at the very least. Anyway, I'd like to know the truth from you. So they go to a diner, they sit down, have a burger, and Gordon just makes up a story, says like, yeah, look, Superman, we're talking about him, seeing like, maybe he's able to work with Batman and like the GCPD. We're trying to figure that out right now. And it's a long and short story of Lois basically saying, look, Superman will always do what he thinks is right, and he will defend everyone. Regardless of what that means, that's what Superman does. And we see that Lois is being followed around by Metallo, just acting as her bodyguard. That's been in place for a while now. And Lois is like, yeah, his decisions have made it so that I have to live my life a certain way. He's not perfect. He's not a god, but he will always try to do the right thing. So we cut back down to Superman being tortured by one of the Subterraneans, and it turns out they think that he went AWOL. They don't actually think he's Superman, but that like he's Axel who just went AWOL. And they're about to like pretty much kill him when all of a sudden Uxer makes his big speech, and he's like, all right, well, you know, I can't kill you now. You're going to get saved by that. So they go out, and Superman reopens his comms so that Gordon can hear. He's like, I can't talk. Just listen, because they're going to say whatever their big plan is during this speech. And we see Uxer steps up, and he's like, I failed. I didn't get the sun, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to keep trying, because I know exactly where it is. And Batman's on the line like, oh my God, you got to take him down. If he knows where it is, we got to take him. He's totally a threat. Superman's like, dude, can you just chill for like 10 seconds, please? So he continues on like, yep, I know where they keep it. We're going to go in there. We're going to make this place 100% better, make the underground great again. And we then see that Batman's like, look, if he's saying that like he's going to send his subterranean army up to get it, it's in the middle of the ocean. They can't possibly get it unless they have like a navy. And then Superman's like, oh, crap. They don't need a navy, because Uxer introduces his newest alliance here of failed kingdom states. Aquaman is now on the subterranean side, and he's 100% coming in to help them out. So, sure, why not? I do like the interconnectedness. I'm not going to lie, I like the fact that we bring in Aquaman, and if you're reading his book, he's kind of disgraced from Atlantis at this point. It would make sense, especially what's going on in his book, that he would show up here and say, you guys are being kind of forced down here against your will. It's not a way to live. I'm here to help out with that. That works. That's absolutely perfect for what's going on there. I like the cross-pollination here. So, yeah. Beyond that, the rest of the book is fine. It does feel weird that Perry White was so against Superman / Clark. I feel like they had a better rapport than that, but if that's the characterization we're going with, so be it. I think I'd say 7.5 for this one. It felt like a good read. I really did enjoy myself. The only thing that's really holding it back right now is still Gordon as Batman. It feels more like a Superman book, and that's fine. Greg Pak's also writing Action Comics, so it makes kind of a bit more sense that that's the way we're going with it, but I'd rather this feel like we're splitting the difference rather than just being a Superman book. But either way, 7.5. Constantine the Hellblazer #3, written by Ming Doyle and James Tynion IV, art by Ming Doyle and Vanessa Del Rey. So, last issue, we kind of really hardcore established that ghosts that follow Constantine around are being double killed, and the last issue had one of his long-timers, I think it was Gaz, however you want to call him, he was out. So this issue picks up in the past, in England. Constantine's getting punched in the face by some rando guy at some club called the End of the World. They're outside the bar, and we see that Constantine was just provoking it because he managed to lift 2 tickets off the guy as he's there with Gaz, and Gaz is like, "You good, man?" And he's like, "Yeah, totally, let's go inside." And we see the other guy like patting his shirt looking for the tickets, and Constantine's like, "See you inside, buddy." So they go inside the club, and they talk about the musical act that's going to be there. And this place is packed, but the musical act, it turns out, is otherworldly. Literally, it is a demon. It is it's going to be doing some crazy musical stuff because it is not a human voice that we'll be singing. And in steps someone who Gaz and Constantine somewhat know. Her name is Georgiana Snow. And Gaz seems to be friendly with her, but Constantine has this little bit of an edge where it doesn't seem like they're really friends, but Gaz is pumping the brakes, saying like, "Hey, no, we're all cool here. We're all just here to enjoy the music, right?" And Georgiana's like, yeah, I'm just here for the music. And he's like, "Really? You spend all your time with your nose in a book, and you're in libraries and stuff like that. What do you know about good music?" And Georgie just gets right up to Constantine's ear, just being like, "I have read books whose footnotes know more about magic than you ever will. Get out of my face, loser." And he's like, "All right, well, I'm going to go up front to the main stage." But before he can get up there, he's stopped by the 4th member of their group, Veronica Delacroix, who is a redhead wearing a nice little black shapely figure. And Georgie's like, "Oh, hey, yeah, sorry, I stepped away. I just saw Gaz and stuff over here. I want to say hi." And he's just like, "Oh, hey, yeah, I thought you were trying to get out of school for fun and whatnot." And she locks eyes with Constantine, and they share a little banter back and forth, and they introduce each other. And Constantine's like, "Yep, I can still feel that night today, even if I think hard enough, but things have changed." And so we cut over to Manchester, present day. Some sort of orgy was going on. There's a bunch of bodies all naked and entwined with each other, all marked with a bunch of crazy ass symbols, all of them dead. And it apparently all happened just as they were starting. Nothing was actually completed here. So we get 2 special agents who are looking on, and they're like, "Oh, geez, this is crazy. I don't even know." We're having to get in the consultant. And it turns out that it's Georgie. She's in here. She's apparently the consulting exorcist of Her Majesty's Secret Service. She's basically Britain's version of Gotham by Midnight, where she comes in for all the creepy crawly stuff. And so she comes in, she's doing a recording like, "All right, there are 13 victims. They're all engaging in unsavory," and then she's cut off as Constantine comes in and says, "They were screwing. You can just say they were screwing." And Georgiana is immediately unimpressed, like, "What are you doing here? Get out of here. This isn't anything to do with you." And he's like, "Oh, some of these configurations I've never even imagined before. I should be taking notes." And she's like, "Look, I am trying to show respect for the dead here. They did not want to be in this. They were forced to by some sort of magical means. You should be able to recognize that yourself. So please try to look up the word decency in a dictionary every once in a while. You might learn something." And Constantine's like, "Hey, look, I didn't come here for an argument or whatever." And she's like, "I haven't seen you in like over a decade. So what could you possibly be for here?" And he's like, "Look, my spooky sense was going off. I thought I could come in here and help." And she's like, "You don't help people, not unless you want something in return, and you expect me to come in and try to help you fix your stuff as well. That's clearly what all of this comes down to again." And he's just like, "All right, hold on. Now, look, we were a team. We did a bunch of cool stuff back in the day. I mean, maybe we didn't like each other, but I could at least count on you. Like you, me, Gaz, Veronica. By the way, how is Veronica? Maybe if I'm looking up old team members here, I should go check her out as well, see what she's up to." And Georgie's just like, "Well, okay, fine. You want to help? You want to help? You find out where the monsters who caused this were hiding, and I will be the one to take them down, because it is literally my job to do that." And we cut back over to the musical act that night. We see that everyone's having a good time. They're all dancing. Some rando tries to start dancing with Veronica. Constantine just separates him away and then inserts himself in there. So a little bit of a romance is blooming. And Georgie looks over and talks to Gaz and is like, "Hey, he's not going to hurt her, is he?" And Gaz is like, "What? Constantine, no. I trust him with my life. I trust him to the end of the world." So we see Constantine's making his way through Manchester. He comes across a guy named Davy Roy, who is a pervert and a snitch. And as such, he's always got his nose to the ground of seeing what sort of weird, kinky stuff's going on around. And we see that we reach this building called the Meridian Line, which is a place where they used to hang out as a gang. And he's like, it's a real shame it's falling apart. So he's realized that this is clearly a succubus who's caused all of this. He knows exactly where it is. He calls up Georgie and it's just like, hey, I found the place and I'm just going to take care of it. Bye. And she's like, don't you dare. This is my job. Don't you do that. So he climbs up into the building expecting to see a whole succubus hive or whatever, but instead he comes across an incubus, which is just the male version of a succubus, and it's just one. And he's like, all right, whatever. He can die just as easily as a succubus could. And we see that he's up on stage playing a guitar, and he's like, oh, hey, great song. You know, it's much better than Orgy Cult Death. And he's like, oh, yeah, and you've got a pretty little face. What do you know about murder? He's like, more than you can imagine. So the guy introduced himself. He is actually Meridian. He's like the owner of the club way, way back in the day. And he goes on a long monologue basically saying like, yeah, my kind is basically just built to destroy. But at a certain point, I got tired of it. And I wanted to create something. And so I'm more or less just trying to get more and more power in order to be able to create something like the music that I used to hear. And I'm going to hear that music again. And he starts getting more and more demonic, lashing out at Constantine. And Constantine's like, all right, well, enough of that. And so he tries to stab the incubus. He misses, and he's immediately screwed over because a whole bunch of different incubi and succubi start coming out of the woodwork and start attacking him. And he's like, all right, I might be a little bit over my head here. And then in comes Georgie. She's got her own knife. She ends up stabbing Meridian, takes him out, and that causes the rest of them to disappear as well. And Georgie's like, yeah, thanks for the assist, dick. And he's just like, hey, yeah, what are you doing here? And he's like, I know this city. This is my city as well. I know that there are like only one of two hives or whatever. So I got here before you ever even stepped foot in the building. But I wanted to see if you would try to dick me over, which you did. And he's like, well, fair enough. But seriously, I don't know why you're being so mean to me. I thought that, like, you know, we didn't stay in touch, but I thought we could still say we were friends. Like, something like about Veronica, and Georgie's like, Veronica's dead. You didn't follow up. You don't know anything else. And I tried to save her, but she couldn't survive you. And he's like, well, you got to believe me, I genuinely didn't know. But like, look, something is happening. I have the ghost of Gaz. He was with me. Something killed him. I don't know what it is, and I need you. Okay, you want me to say it? I need you to help me out here. And he's like, she basically says, like, he died 5 years ago. Veronica died 3 years ago, and it was because of you both times. So whatever it is, it's like affecting you or whatever, I don't care. Pick your blood up off the floor after being attacked and get out of here, because I never want to help you again, you worthless child. And we cut back to the past one more time where after the demon is played, they are all talking. They're like, hey, man, that was awesome. Like, maybe we should do something like that. Let's make a band that gets tapped into like that sort of demon thing, you know? And Veronica's like, yeah, Georgie, let's do it. It sounds like a good time. And Georgie's held back a little bit, but after seeing Veronica get into it, is like, all right, sure, why not? Let's go ahead and do it. And so they all make a pact to get into that sort of stuff. And we end with Constantine leaving the building. His hand covered in blood, and he's like, I cannot believe that Veronica's gone. Like, I all of my friends are actually dead, and it is constantly because of me, and I can't even keep their spirits safe with me anymore. So that's the issue. It's a downer, but like, I like it. I like... The first issue was kind of a misnomer. I feel like it was kind of bridging the old Constantine into this one. What I like about what we're doing here is the fact that we aren't just making him Magic Superman. We're not just making him this thing where he can pull out like, oh yes, I have this spell that will do this thing or whatever like that. Like, he feels like he does have his hand in the demonic world and he knows some stuff about it, but like, it's not something where it's basically a superpower where he's able to just do magic spells a la, say, like Zatanna. Like, this is a guy who would have to work for it and has to like really put in the effort to make this stuff happen for him. I like that. I think it's a good way to take the character because it really grounds him and brings him back down to, no, just something as threatening as like a demon or whatever is still a threat instead of him fighting against like gods of time or whatever. So no, it's a solidly written book. I like the art style in it too. I'm going to say this is I'll say it's an 8. I think this issue, especially at the emotional core of Constantine realizing Veronica's dead, I think that was a real punch to the gut. So yeah, 8 for this. Gotham Academy number 9, written by Becky, Cloonan, and Brendan Fletcher, art by Karl Kerschl. So last issue we had the whole thing where Tristan is the Man-Bat and he got injured and everyone else found out about it. And then Olive ended up reading a note from her mother that she just found floating in a river. This issue picks up with someone watching Olive from behind, seems like a wolf, starts charging after her, but then all of a sudden, Maps and the rest of the team come up and say, "Hey, we found you, Olive. There you are." And she's like, "Ah, God, what is it? What do you want?" She's like, we've been looking for you. You've been out here in monster-infested woods." And Pomeline's like, "What do you got behind your back?" Because she's hiding the note. She's like, Nothing. Anyway, we should get back to our rooms, yeah, if it's so scary out here." And Maps is like, "Nah, we're the monster hunters. Let's go. We're going to take out the monsters. A detective club. Let's do it." So they find, and they look around the area, they find a little piece of hair, and I always forget his name, Colton, I believe it is, they literally never say it, is like, "Oh, I can analyze what type of fur this is if I take it back to my lab." And Map's like, "You have a lab?" And he's like, "Yeah, but it's secret, so I can't tell you about it." And Palm's just like, "Take us there, I'm going to tell your secret crush about her." And he's like, "All right, fine, whatever." So they all go back over to a Breaking Bad style RV hidden out in the woods where, as far as I can tell, he just has a lava lamp and a laptop, but I guess he can run some sort of genetic whatever on it. And we get Kyle and Olive talking briefly, and Kyle's like, "Have you gone to see Tristan?" And she's like, "No, I've been preoccupied with some other stuff." And Colton says like, "All right, everyone, this is wolf hair. We've guaranteed it." And so Palm's like, "Awesome, we got a werewolf. Let me tell you all about werewolves." And she starts doing like a little history lesson and just like, "Now, what are the curse of the lycanthrope?" And everyone's just like, "Well, what if it was genetic testing? Or, that thing that like happened to Tristan? That's a totally obvious way that this could go down." And Pauline's like, "Fine, I guess that too. But regardless, werewolves are weak to silver, garlic, all that other stuff. So here's some silver necklaces. Everyone put one on." But everyone looks around like, "Wait a minute, what happened to Olive?" Turns out she went back to her room, and as she gets in there, this creepy-eyed little girl named Catherine, who is Maps' roommate, is inside her room trying to tear down one of her posters. And I was like, "What are you doing in my room?" And she just storms out in a huff. And as she's doing so, a envelope appears underneath her door. And as she looks at it, it's her classified intake admission papers, and inside the admission papers it's just listing a whole bunch of stuff about her mom being a villain and wearing a costume, and her name is Calamity. And she's like, "Oh my God, this is impossible." And that's where Maps comes in being like, "Hey, brought you a necklace, need you to put it on." And Olive's like, "Hey, your roommate was in here stealing my posters." And she's like, "That's weird. I guess she just liked whatever was on the poster. Let's go. We got to deal with a werewolf." And she's like, "Actually, I need to go talk to Professor Strange for a while." So Professor Strange, of course, the therapist. Maps is waiting outside the room as she goes in. It's like, "These are my intake papers, my admission papers. I thought I was here on a scholarship, but it says I'm here because you want to keep an eye on me because of my mom? What's that all about?" And Strange is like, "You really should know about this. Look, I don't know all the details either. It's the headmaster, Hammer. He knows about it, and any interaction with you by any of the staff needs to be reported." And she's like, "That's super creepy and messed up." And he's like, "Don't worry, I'm not going to report our meetings here. I'm here to make sure you get better and all that. But like, there is another student that's in a similar boat to you. Maybe you've heard of him. His name's Tristan." So we go over to Langstrom's lab where they're still running tests on him, trying to get him all healed up. Langstrom gets a knock on the door, is about to turn away whoever it is, but it turns out it's Olive and Maps. So the professors step out to give her a private moment, and Olive talks to Professor, I think it's McPherson, and it's just like, "Did you know they called my mom a villain? Why didn't you tell me that?" And she's like, "Oh, that's a complicated issue." So she goes over, talks to Tristan. Tristan's like, "Hey, yeah, no, I'm doing fine. Don't worry about it. A lot better than getting shot by a crossbow." And she's like, "Yeah, sorry about that." And he's like, "Don't worry about it." And she brings up that they're both here at the academy to be watched. And he's like, "I don't know anything about that, but Batman's the one who found me. And Professor Milo, who's previously here, was good at comparative genetics. He was going to help me, but it turns out that he, is kind of a villain, so he's no longer here anymore, and now Langstrom is trying to cure me of what's going on. And all of a sudden, a werewolf busts in through the window and starts screaming about revenge. So Tristan goes in man-bat form. He attacks a little bit. Olive just bonks it over the head with a stool, trying to fight. And it looks like they force it out the window, or at least Tristan forces it out along with it. Everyone down on the ground is like, hey, are you guys good up there? And Maps and Olive are like, yeah. And Maps is like, we just fought a werewolf. We're doing great. Anyway, we're going to be down here. And did anyone else notice that the werewolf was wearing Coach Humphrey's outfit? So clearly this is Coach Humphreys, and Langstrom's like, I could try to make a cure for him. It's a werewolf. I don't know how that's going to work. And Colton's like, I can help with that, because apparently now I'm a super genius. So the rest of the gang runs after. They find Tristan. He's just like, oh yeah, I'm fine. It just left me. It heard some other noises, and there's howling from the gymnasium where apparently there's a late night tennis practice going on. So Maps is like, all right, we got this. We're going to stop it. We're going to make a wolf trap. And Maps puts down this whole thing of like, okay, we're going to get in the gymnasium. Then we're going to evacuate it. Then we're going to take all of the doorknobs and all the handles and stuff, lace it with silver-based paint and garlic spray and wolfsbane. And then when we're in there, we're going to whack them over the head with a silver-plated golf club. So that'll be it, and then we'll place charms around him until we can get the antidote working. So Maps rolls up the map and says, that's perfect. That's exactly what we're going to do. So everyone runs off to go do that, but Olive is stopped because she hears the sound of her mother's voice behind her. And as she turns around to look who it is, she sees the werewolf coming at her, but she's kind of frozen in place because she feels her mother taking hold of her behind her, and she grips Olive's arms and says, hey, I'm here to help you. Use your fire. Burn the wolf. Burn the school. Burn Gotham City. And Olive's just like, no, get out of my head. But her eyes light up with fire, and she's like, they did this to me, Olive. You must burn them all. And then all of a sudden, the werewolf gets clocked in the neck with a tranq dart. It's Colton. They made the antidote. The entire plan was for naught. The rest of the group runs in like, oh, hey, we secured the gym, but you didn't follow us. What's going on? Oh, Jesus, it's Coach Humphreys. Olive, did you do that? And Colton's like, no, it was me. We made the antidote. I just saved the day. No big deal. So turns out that the coach was raiding Milo's lab and using whatever antidote or serum he was working on there to stay normal. Now that Milo's gone, he's been forced to turn into a werewolf. So when he starts coming to, he has no memory of what's going on. Langstrom comes up being like, oh, there, sir, we'll get you taken care of. Everything's okay now. And McPherson turns around and is just like, all right, kids, how about we keep this all under wraps? We don't want anybody knowing about that, right? So everyone starts heading back to the dorms. Pommeline pulls Olive aside and says, hey, I took the note that your mom wrote you and I read it. And she's like, you had no right to say that. Yeah, but you wouldn't have given it up and I need to know stuff. So here's the thing. I did some digging and I found out stuff about Calamity, like the villain that they say that she is. I know some stuff. And I can't tell if this is later or if it's like a hallucination she's having, but they're now inside of like a theater. There's a stage and everyone's like setting up. It's just like props and like rehearsals and stuff. And Olive sees her mother, the being that represents her mother, is on the stage, and she's like, oh no, she's here. We need to run. And then the entire stage goes up in fire, and Pommeline doesn't see the mother, but we don't get her reaction to whether or not the fire's there. And yeah, that's the issue. Just leaves off on that. So a little confusing on that last page, but overall, I like the links that are being made here, because if you go back 2 issues ago, 3 issues ago, however you want to count it, we had the Damian Wayne issue. Different artist, and it was focused on Maps interacting with that. It was its own separate thing. Then we get the last issue where it's Kyle, and it's got Olive in it, but we're focused on Kyle and how he's kind of a part of the group but not part of the group. He's joining it. But then this issue is focused on Olive, but it all flows very naturally. It feels like one continuous story, and I really like that from a writing perspective, where you can do these very different things, but still tell this cohesive story that allows you to focus on different aspects of it. So, no, it's a very well-written book. Curious to see where we go from here, especially now that we have a name to Calamity. I think that may have been established over in Arkham Manor. Maybe? I don't know. It was definitely somewhere around there, but it's something that's been set up for a while, so I'm curious to see, now that Olive knows, how she's going to take it. For this book, though, I'm going to say it is... I'll say a 7.5. It's close to the 8. I can't really point to what's missing. It just doesn't feel like it's at that 8 standard for me, but it is still a very well-written book on the overall. Just this one issue is just a little bit shy for whatever reason. So still very good. Still check it out. 7.5. Starfire number 3, written by Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Emanuela Lupacchino. So last issue was a whole thing of trying to help out during the middle of the hurricane. She ends up rescuing Soul, who seems like he's going to be some sort of a love interest here, and blah, blah, blah. This issue picks up with a cruise ship that comes across a guy on a just washed up piece of like a door or something like that, and he gets brought on the ship. He's like, yeah, hey, I was stuck out there. My name's Soren Hook. I was stuck out there in the hurricane, and I just barely held on. I was like just clinging to life when you guys found me. Can I please get some water? And the captain was like, oh, of course, yeah, take this man down, and we'll going to have to retrieve the debris from underneath the ocean. It's our duty as a ship, but don't worry, we'll take care of you. So we got one of the sailors is investigating him, or at the very least just talking to him, and he's like, yeah, I was originally from New Jersey, moved down to Miami, and I can't help but notice this cruise ship is very empty. And he's like, yeah, we were just on a maintenance track, we're just heading back to Miami right now, Key West. And he says, yeah, there was no one else on the ship, it was just me, it was a tiny little thing, no worries about it. And the phone rings, turns out they found some bodies down there in the debris. And so immediately Soren's eyes start glowing blue, and he's like, oh, gave me away. Yeah, they're all dead, just like you're going to be in 5 seconds. And I literally cannot make out this panel. He grabs hold of the weapon, and his speech bubbles turn to a bluish hue and says, don't fight me, hand me the weapon, that's an order. To which the sailor says, Dad? ? And then his brains are theoretically blown out. I don't know. So we get Starfire. She's cleaning up a swimming pool that has a bunch of garden gnomes in it, and she's like, oh, were these statues of famous people from Earth's history? And it's like, no, just garden gnomes. And she states how it reminds her of a race on a planet nearby to her. And then she sees a cat, and apparently they have a long history of Hemingway cats that have 6 toes that spread throughout the area that apparently came from Ernest Hemingway himself. Sure. So this is all being explained by Soul to Starfire, and then Starfire's like, oh, well, can I see inside the house? And Soul's like, yeah, of course. And she points out, hey, it seemed like you were upset about me being in the house. I don't want to intrude. And she's like, he's basically saying like, no, I just have a lot of memories here, shattered hopes and dreams. I'd rather not get into it. And she's like, I absolutely understand. I will not push it. No problem. And he's like, awesome. Why does nobody else in my life understand that? So she is told that she needs to cover electricity and one other thing, water bills, but she doesn't have a job yet, so she's got to look out for that. And she's like, oh yeah, by the way, is it cool if I continue using the shower outside? I feel the sun on my skin exhilarating. He's like, sure, but like, draw the curtain at the very least. And she has to go upstairs, but he's like, nah, I'm not ready to go up there. Check it out on your own. I gotta go. So he walks off all sad, and Starfire's like, I can feel his sadness. I hope I can help with that somehow. A broken heart has to heal eventually. So we cut down to the beach. This guy's going out surfing, and the girlfriend's like, oh, you're going to get yourself killed. There's still riptides and stuff from the hurricane. He's like, whatever. It's awesome, gnarly swell out there. So she goes back over and sunbathes on her towel, and then all of a sudden some giant clawed hands come up from the sand and drag her down and start killing her. We see the guy comes back in from surfing. He's looking around for his girlfriend. Her bones and her bikini top come up from the sand, and he's like, what the hell? And then he gets bonked in the head by her skull and dragged down into the sand as well. So we then cut over to Starfire, who's hungry, and she opens up the fridge and finds there's nothing in it but like baking soda, and she's like, that must be tasty. The people always say how much they love soda, and she eats it, and she's like, that wasn't tasty at all. I don't like that. I'm going to go get some real food. So As she starts walking in town, everyone's just ogling her. She comes across the clothes designer, Javi, and she's like, oh, is your store still okay after the hurricane? He's like, oh, yeah, totally. By the way, this is my friend Adam. And Adam is a black guy, but Corey's like, oh my God, what color is your skin tone? Everyone says I'm orange. What is this? And he's like, mocha with extra espresso? And she's like, I would love to try on your skin sometime. And he's like, that's creepy as hell. So it turns out there's something about like a luau going on next week and it's got food or whatever. So she's invited to that. She makes her way down to the local corner store, grocery store, and there's this guy in there named Ezra who walks her through all the different fruits and fresh fruit they offer, how to eat a watermelon and a pineapple and stuff like that. Meanwhile, we cut back over to, what was her name? Selena? I don't know. Whatever. Stella. That was it. It was some sort of star thing. Stella, the sheriff, is brought up and saying, oh, God, after all the hurricane stuff, now we're getting a report that a cruise ship didn't hit the brakes and it crashed into a local dock. So we got to go down and check that out. She's running down to go get there because it's only a couple blocks away. When she passes by Starfire, and Starfire sees her in a rush and just like, hup, just lifts her up and flies her the rest of the way. And she's like, please don't ever do that without me asking again. And at that point, she realizes, okay, I got to get up onto the ship. Starfire, can you give me a lift? And she's like, but you said don't ask, like, don't do that again. She's like, well, I was lying before. Don't listen to me. And she's like, should I not listen to you now? She's like, oh my God, Starfire, please. So they get up onto the ship. There's a little bit of a thing explaining like, yeah, you know, cruise ships, they're for people who want to go on vacation, but also for just like ultra wealthy people. And Starfire's like, I saw something about 1% on the news. And she's like, that's pretty much what that is. So Stella can't get open the door. Starfire just busts it down. Turns out there's bodies and blood everywhere. Stella says, hey, you need to get out of here. I don't want you in here. This isn't like too much for you, and I would be responsible if anything else happened. We don't know where the culprit even is. So there's a restaurant in town called, I think it's like the Blue Monkey or something like that. Head down there. You'll have a drink on me, and I'll call you if I need you. So we see Stella goes around the cruise ship with her officers, starts clearing the place. She comes across a sailor who was hiding in a closet, and he's like, oh, I was just hiding. The screams were awful, but I heard him jump over the edge of the ship just before we crashed into the pier. So he's not here anymore. And Stella's like, okay, well, I'm still going to bring you in for questioning because like I just have to take your word for that. Like, I need to know whether or not you actually did it, but regardless, I'll at least listen to what you're saying. So we see Starfire makes her way, goes to the Blue Monkey. There's some sort of beast. I think it's the one who was down at the beach, sees Starfire talking to the waitress through the window of the Blue Monkey saying, it's her. And so Starfire gets gifted a whole bunch of drinks from every single male patron and a cat at the bar. And Starfire's like, oh, I couldn't possibly drink all these drinks, but I don't want to insult anybody. What should I do? And the waitress is like, she's asking like, I don't know about what to do here in like, she's like, what, you mean here like Key West? And she's like, no, here on Earth. I don't know your culture. Do I have to drink all these drinks? And she's like, oh no, it's like a mating ritual. And Starfire's like, oh, so they all want to have sex? And he's like, well, yeah, but like you can't just give it up. And she's like, but what if I want to? And it's like, well, I don't know what to tell you. And the waitress is just like, look, you really have no idea about how all this works, do you? And she's like, no, I'm quite new to this place. And she's like, look, I get it. I'm from way down south. Wink, 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 wink. You know, down under. Wink, 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 wink. And Starfire's like, oh, well, I hope to visit one day. And then all of a sudden the monster busts in through the window, starts yelling like, I'm going to kill you. And Starfire's like, hey, you hide. I'll take care of this. And the waitress is like, wait, what is this thing? And as she blasts it with her star bolts, it just grows inside. It absorbs energy. And the waitress is like, don't blast him. It's only going to make him bigger. It absorbs energy. And Starfire's like, oh, you know about this thing? And she's like, well, it's not that common on the surface, but under the surface, yeah, a bit. So we see that some cops pull up. They start shooting at it. It gets bigger again. And Stella hears the gunshots from the cruise, and they see the monster now the size of a small house. So it's like, oh, God, we got to get over there. And then as Starfire starts flying up into the sky to get a better view of it, the waitress flies up too. And she's like, oh, you can fly too? And she's like, yeah, I think the monster's actually here for me. I buried him a while back. And she's like, what? Who are you? And the waitress rips off her outfit to reveal that she's Atlee, and she is responsible for this monster. And Starfire is like, okay, well, how are we going to stop him? And Atlee says, good question. And that's That's basically where we leave it. So, Atlee, the waitress from the center of the earth. Sure. I mean, I don't mind it. I actually think it's kind of clever, this thing of like, you know, Starfire stands out so much, but you have someone who also may have similar powers that is blending in, and that could be a good way for Starfire to like have someone to confide in from a superhero standpoint. And I appreciate that from a character perspective. I do question it being someone I've never heard of. It feels like a deep pull, but I know that Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti are not really ones to shy away from just creating new characters outright. So I think Atlee may be just a new character, but I really have no idea. We'll see, I'm sure, origin backstory stuff next issue, but as it stands now, it's an okay issue. I don't think it was really pushing that much. It didn't feel... It's weird because it doesn't feel like it's really forwarding the plot, but it also doesn't feel like it's just character development either. It feels like it's setup. I feel like we had the hurricane in the first 2 issues, and now we're doing whatever this cruise ship thing is, but we also already had this beast thing going on for at least an issue. I don't know. There's a lot going on. So I'm going to say this is I'll say it's a 7. That's kind of just where I'm coming down on it. It just feels right in the gut. It doesn't feel like it's bad enough to be a 6.5, but I also don't feel like it's anywhere close to an 8. So, yeah, 7. New Suicide Squad number 11, written by Sean Ryan, art by Philippe Briones. So last issue, they arrived in this town with this cult that's the offshoot of the League of Shadows or whatever, and Captain Boomerang taught the kids how to have fun, to which he is being ordered to be put to death, and Black Manta's like, yes, please, I'm all about that. So we open up, I guess the next morning, Deadshot sees the whole caravan of guns and stuff go by, and he's like, has anyone seen an Australian man? Anybody at all? And then he spots Black Manta, hops on the truck the Manta was on, and is like, hey, I was looking for you guys. Where's Boomerang? And he's like, oh, he's incarcerated. He was corrupting the children of the city. He's like, what does that mean? And he's just like, oh, he distracted them from their true purpose. What does that mean? Can you please just speak English to me? And he's just like, look, we're on a mission right now, and right now we're going to destroy a refinery that is attempting to make Lazarus Pit fluid. This is very important, and we can't be concerned about a social pollutant like Captain Boomerang. And Deadshot's like, oh, you actually really believe in this cause. Gotcha. So we cut over to Belle Reve, where Bonnie, the secretary, comes in to Amanda and Vic Sage's office and is just like, hey, we just got some intelligence that a big caravan's going to attack a corporation called the Corvus Corporation, which is a British refinery. Like, it's on the up and up. It is theoretically a normal place. And our team, our Suicide Squad, is riding in with them. And Vic Sage is like, we need to pull them out. We can't have them attacking this facility. And Waller's like, no, it would blow up the entire mission. We just need a way to get them to not attack the facility without blowing their cover. And Bonnie's like, I have an idea. So they call up Reverse Flash, who's hanging out with Harley and Parasite, who's just chilling, waiting for anything to do. And Reverse Flash says, hey, turns out we got a new side mission. We need to go and stop them from blowing up this refinery without blowing their cover, because that's part of it. And Parasite's like, is that allowed? Can we do that? And Harley's like, hell yeah, we're going to go save the day. So we cut over to the other group, which seemingly is either protected and or run by the Pearl group, who I believe were the ones who outstretched an invite to Vic Sage at the end of the last volume. But they're basically saying, hey, we got hostiles on the way. Their leader, Saladin, is trying to kill us all. They're coming to slaughter you. They're all going to fail. We're going to take them all out. Let's send them screaming back to hell. So we see him, Saladin, riding up wearing Lex Luthor armor, because of course they just bought a whole bunch of supervillain gear. And he's like, oh yeah, the devils ahead of us have chosen sin. We are the righteous path. Let's show them what's up. And they pull out a weather wizard wand to cause it to start raining. And then the battle commences, and we see everyone runs in. They drop a bunch of fear gas in order to cause all the people there to start freaking out, and they start looking like demons that are attacking them. And he's just like, oh god, I don't know what's going on, but just kill them all. And Deadshot is hiding behind some cover. He's trying to take some shots, but it's not working. He's actually missing here. He's like, come on, just shoot someone, damn it. And so he sits down, he's like, I need my pills, my arm's killing me. And he takes out a pill that's labeled clear, and then all of a sudden an explosion goes off before he can take it. And in comes Parasite, Reverse Flash, and Harley. And Reverse Flash comes over and explains the situation. He's like, hey, look, we're here to stop you. This is a thing so you don't blow your cover, and we're going to try to make it seem like you're still hostile, like to us, but like we're here to stop you from attacking this whole place. Meanwhile, Parasite's just being frozen by freeze ray tech, and like he's just out. He's like, he didn't do a damn thing. So he's immediately out. Harley's jumping in. She's got a lead pipe. She's trying to attack as many of the Saladin's men as humanly possible from the League, but she immediately gets taken down as well. There's nothing she can do. And Deadshot's like, okay, well, if you're really here to take us all out, you really shouldn't be sitting here talking to me because that's really going to blow the cover. So get back out there and actually do something about it. So he's like, oh, yeah, right. So he starts running up to the top of a building. Saladin's men are equipped with some sort of sonic weapon that just blasts him out of the entire facility by like several miles. So he's gone entirely. We see that Saladin makes it into the central pit and he calls it an abomination. One of the other guys comes in and he's like, I was going to say the same thing to you. And he gets up and he attacks Saladin and manages to get him on the ground. And he's like, I'm going to rid the world of you, you mass murdering psychopath. And then Black Manta blasts a hole in the middle of the guy. And Saladin's like, you saved me, soldier. And he's like, I would do anything for you. I believe in your cause. So they do something off panel to the Lazarus Pit and say, all right, we did it. And they come out. Parasite's been captured. Harley's been captured. Reverse Flash is nowhere to be seen. Deadshot's like, uh-oh, this isn't going well. And over the comms, we have Amanda Waller calling in saying like, Reverse Flash, can you hear us? You're not responding. Neither are Harley or Parasite. We're going to have to assume the worst. And we end with the entire facility on fire, and Reverse Flash is just unconscious on a cliffside miles away. So, yeah. Very fast read. Very quick. As this book really has been. I really don't think that this is one that is too complicated, but it has a good through line to it. I like how we're doing this. I will say, I feel like we've done this story already. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I swear to God, like, one of the most recent things was someone going native and, like, saying, yeah, no, I'm all in on this. I want to go through it. It seems really familiar to me, but I can't place who it would be. As for the rest of it, I mean, I'm curious. I want to see how they're going to get out of it, but it does kind of just ride the B tier. It's not an outstanding book. It's full of a bunch of B tier characters. It's just doing its own thing. So I think I'm going to say this one is probably just a flat 7. It's fine for what it is. It's a good enough written book, but it is not doing anything too amazingly outrageous. So check it out if you're interested, I guess, in the general concept or just want a fun action book, because this is not taking itself seriously at all. Red Hood Arsenal number 3, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Denis Medri. So last issue, who gives a damn? They were working for someone who has some power in DC, something about mimes, and then started taking a job in Detroit on the last page. We open up with, I don't know. I don't even think we get what's going on. Some random fight scene where he was thrown through some plate glass window. Arsenal ends up shooting an arrow into Jason's chest to save him. And he's like, ow, that hurts, son of a bitch. And he's like, oh, sorry, yeah, I'll make and invent that anti-gravity arrow I've been thinking about for a while. And then a bunch of people down on the ground are like, yeah, go Bat Guy. We love you, Bat Guy. And Red Hood's like, why are people cheering me on? And we see that there is a big rented out billboard across from this building that says Rent a Bat. Call now at 555-RED-ARSE. So we cut to sometime later. Turns out that they have set up base in LA. Why LA? And Arsenal is patching up Jason. And Jason's like, look, I I get where you're coming from to an extent, but we are doing heroic things. We shouldn't be charging money for that. That's not, and you haven't even asked me about it. You are just doing this on your own. That's so messed up. And he's like, hey, we will be helping people. It's whatever. And I'm sorry for not consulting you, but look at all the money we made from that Battleworth job alone. And he's like, yeah, and you spent it all. And he's like, right, on the advertising campaign. So at that point, Battleworth comes in and she's like, are you guys stupid? Are you dumb? What are you doing? And she holds up the Rent-A-Bat ad that is playing on YouTube. That's basically like, do you have a criminal empire that needs taken care of? Call us. Rent-A-Bat. That's who we are. And in the last issue, there was a single panel of someone who saved some holographic mimes from decaying into nothing. We go back to that person who still has the holographic mimes and is saying like, this may cause a problem. And then the mimes start fake crying. And she's like, all right, I don't need any humor out of you two. And like, that's it. That's all we get. There's no more of this character in this book. So we go back to Battleworth, who says, you guys worked best as my secret weapon. And now you're out there in front of everybody. I have no use for that. I will never be calling on you again. Goodbye. And Jason's like, dude, that was our only very clean source of income, and we don't have any other jobs lined up. What the hell are you doing? And Arsenal's like, maybe this was a poor idea. Oh well, we've already gotten some hits on the Rent-A-Bat website. For instance, let's go to Detroit. So they go to Detroit. And they're looking around trying to find this guy who's hired them. And Jason's like, I knew it. We'd be getting a bunch of prank callers. This is stupid. You're stupid. You're a dumb person, Arsenal. And Arsenal's like, hey, no, it'll work out. It's going to be fine. And then this guy on a park bench is just like, yes, you wanted my employer. I sent the private jet after you, blah, blah, blah. And so he's like, look, you're probably curious as to the identity of my employer. Just know he's the criminalist. And they start listing off a whole bunch of criminals in the DC universe. Humor ensues. And he's like, no, it's none of them. It's the criminal mastermind known as the Underbelly. To which point Arsenal and Red Hood are like, we I've literally never heard of that before, but give us an address and we'll show up tonight at 7. So they're walking down the street later. And they call out like, Jason, you were kind of a gang boss for a while. Maybe in this continuity, who knows? Don't you think you should know about Underbelly if he is such a big deal? And he's like, I wasn't really that much of a gang boss. And he's like, dude, you put people's head in a duffel bag. Yeah, you were a gang boss. Like, let's not go over that. So they arrive at a broken down, destructed building, and it's as they step in, it's like, yes, Mr. Hood, Mr. R, step in. And there's this dude who... he looks like Clayface, if Clayface was more like bleached and also had little talking heads on his shoulders and is kind of just more of a morbidly obese man. But Underbelly, he says he can be called the boss, and Red Hood's like, we're not sure we're going to take the job yet. You got to tell us what you want first. And he's like, yes, I am the personification of corruption in this world. I am the embodiment of greed and murder and envy. Every sin, I am every dark deed. And I want you two as my enforcers for my criminal empire, unlike the spineless twit I've got over here. And then the guy's like, boss. And then Underbelly just slaps his head clean off, just like decapitates him. To which point Red Hood immediately unloads 2 full clips into Underbelly. And so he's like, nah, we're not doing that. I don't like it. And Arsenal's like, you can't kill all of our potential clients. It's like, this dude just said he was the embodiment of every sin on earth. He's not a potential client. This was a dumb idea. You're still stupid. We're leaving. And they're saying they're going to take down the billboard and all that sort of stuff. But then, wouldn't you know it, Underbelly isn't exactly human. So, much like Clayface, he starts reassembling himself. He comes up after Red Hood, pins him to a wall, and he's like, I can't be killed, and I am not here to kill, but I am everywhere that if there is a crime. If you will not serve me, then you shall die. And then Arsenal just shoots him with an arrow. And it like destroys him. I maybe it's like an EMP, maybe it's Sonic, I don't know, but he's scattered into like a million pieces, and that seems to actually do it this time. Or at least it'll take him quite some time to reform. And Arsenal's like, yeah, okay, maybe this was a bad idea. And now Red Hood's the one saying, wait a minute, hold on. we got this underbelly dude. We didn't even know he existed at all, but he called because of our business. Maybe we can use this business to lure out scum and vermin and whatnot that needs to be stomped out. We can do a lot different with this if we just use it for that sort of angle. And they basically say that in order to take that, they need to go to the most vile, crime-ridden pit of despair in the world. And Arsenal says, "You mean Gotham?" He's like, "Yes, of course I mean Gotham." So our next page is what's going to happen next issue? They're in Gotham, and wouldn't you know it, they're attacked by Jim Gordon Batman. It's nice to know that ADHD can write a book. It's nice to know that the personification of it is able to just write a book. Oh, God. Look, I have enough issues with, like, the way that Scott Lobdell writes is very much in the moment. It's very much of, like, we are only focusing on what we're doing here. If you're thinking about what happened last issue, you're thinking too far back. Except he'll do one page or even just one panel across like 6 issues and then set up something for that 7th issue. You won't get any payoff, any explanation or anything like that on what that one page / one panel character is or is doing, but you'll just see them like hanging around. It's like right before Death of Superman, where there was the one page where we saw just like a fist pounding against the wall until it finally broke out. We had no idea what that was. We didn't know where it was going to be leading to, but it was this idea. It was this thing of like, oh, but it's coming. It's this thing happening there. The difference being is that was Doomsday, and this is a woman who controls holographic mimes. Not a fan. Not a fan in general. Humor on this really isn't working for me either. I really just don't have anything good to say about this. It's juvenile and just not working. So I'm going to say art is okay, but it's not enough to save the book anywhere at all. So 4. Just not good. Catwoman number 43, written by Genevieve Valentine, art by David Messina. So last issue, it was just a bunch of all of the things we've been doing. It's hard to really narrow this down issue by issue because it's a lot of plot threads moving. But the big thing was that Eiko has decided to bring on Spoiler as a trainee. So this issue picks up, we have Selena throwing a gala and saying like, yeah, this is important to keep up appearances and whatever else, blah, blah, blah. But the last issue, we also had a bunch of kind of just smaller families, but people who were on Black Mask side coming back over to the Galaprisi side, and this is kind of a reward for that as well. We see Ward comes up behind Selena just being like, yeah, you should know the families are on the brink. Like, there's a whole big thing going on here. She's like, yeah, that's the point of the party. That's what we're doing here. So he basically tells her, like, look, if you're going to show any good faith with the family, have us, give you any trust. You need to give some in return. And she's like, yeah, trust is a two-way street, and you're not giving me any either. So if I have to start, just know I won't be home tonight, and you and Antonia can figure it out. So she ends up leaving the gala as we cut over to Black Mask and the, whatever the Gawa clan is. I forget the first part of it, or Hasegawa, that's it. And basically they're saying like, yeah, we're losing a bunch of things. A bunch of the families are slipping from our control. We don't have a lot going on here. We need to make a statement. We need to do something that's going to really let people know that we mean business here. And we see, the whole training facility of the Hasegawa plan. And it's like, yep, betrayal of us only has one consequence. Eiko, get all your guys together. We're moving out. We're going to show them what happens when they betray us. And Eiko points out, like, what about Penguin and all the Forced Lane people? And it's just like, they're necessary sacrifice, whatever we got to do. And Black Mask points out, like, if Penguin gets involved in this, he's going to regret it. So we see that they are willing to go scorched earth here, take out anybody they have to in order to try to maintain their sense of control. We see Eiko then goes upstairs and she's keeping Stephanie a secret, who's doing practice throwing kunais. And Stephanie points out, like, yeah, it sounds like Penguin's going to be seeing some action tonight, though. And he's like, yeah, don't worry about that. Don't worry about any of this. This is way above your pay grade. I'm the one who's going to be handling this here. And she's like, what, you don't want me stepping out in the fray? And we see Eiko throws a bunch of kunais like right past Stephanie's head, just being like, no. Selena is the one who gives the mean speeches that try to motivate you into doing something. I am literally just here telling you to be careful. So we cut over to Eiko and Stephanie jumping around town, jumping around Forster Lane, seeing if they can get a feel for what's going on here. And they come across some of the Forster Lane people already being hurt and killed and whatever else. The one guy, Lewis, is there, and he's going to be fine, but he is a little worse for wear. And they point out, like, wait a minute, was Sionis here? And he's like, no, I didn't see him. I have no idea where he is. And they realize, oh, wait, he wasn't going to get his hands dirty at this low-level thing. He was going to go after the bigger fish. He was going after Selena. So immediately Eiko feels bad because she's let her training with Stephanie blind her to some of the bigger stuff here. And Stephanie points out, like, Selena's Catwoman, though. Like, she'll be fine. She can handle this. And Eiko's like, but she shouldn't have to. She has so much on her plate already. I'm trying to make this easier for her. So Stephanie has to go off with Lewis, get him taken care of, and then Eiko makes her way over to Selena's penthouse to try to warn her. However, when she arrives, Black Mask is there, and he's waiting and says, Selena, I know it's you. It's come to this. So Eiko tries throwing some punches. Black Mask dodges enough to pull out a gun, shoots Eiko, and she plummets down to the street below. So we then go over to Antonia, who is going to make a deal with the Penguin, or at least talk to him to see what he's up about, where he's at right here. And he's basically saying, like, oh, I'm surprised you wanted to talk to me and all that sort of stuff. And Penguin basically just says, like, look, I'm on Black Mask's side. Of course I'm willing to go to your side, but I need to know exactly what I'm going to be getting out of it and whether or not I feel that you have confidence in your group here. So if you intend to rule the Calabrese crime family, I want you to bring me the head of Selena to show me you mean business. And we don't see Antonia's reaction to that. I believe it is Detective Keys coming out of the random bank here. I'll be honest, I don't fully remember this plot or if this is something that was done before, but Selena is watching over her, and then all of a sudden Batman shows up behind her. Jim Gordon, Batman in the bunny suit, saying, like, you're under arrest for like 1,000 robberies. And she's like, oh, I would never dream of stealing. That's not who I am. And he's like, yeah, okay, are you going to come in quietly? And she's like, nah. So Gordon starts throwing punches. They seem actually intent to injure, and Catwoman's like, I haven't had to deal with a Batman that I've worried was actually going to kill me before. I don't like it. So she ends up just pole vaulting off of him, off into the streets below, and takes off her Catwoman mask, puts on a big trench coat, and just like, well, I'm going to have to lay low until all the sirens die down, and then Selena Kyle will show up to be able to finish the job here. But as she's walking around, she's stopped by Bruce Wayne, who at this point doesn't have his memories, and is like, excuse me, miss, do you need help? And she's like, yeah, I do need a place to hang out for a while. So they go into a nearby rec center where Bruce Wayne is working, and he's like, yeah, if you need a woman's shelter, I know one down the street. And she's like, yeah, I built it, but no, I'm good, thank you. And they just kind of just start talking, and Bruce is saying, she's amazed that Bruce Wayne is down in a rec center, like even he's not even able to get out of Gotham. And he's just like, no, I'm fighting for something here. I'm doing what feels right, And she's like, yeah, thanks. Anyway, I should get back out there. And he's like, oh, my pleasure, Miss Kyle. And she's like, oh, you know who I was? And he's like, of course I know who you were. And whatever you did, like, I have no place in it, but maybe don't do it if it's going to get on Batman's bad side. And she's like, yeah, no, I just that wasn't about me. That was about something else. Don't worry about it. So she goes back out on the street, and she's like, all right, that was weird. We then cut over to a bunch of different things. I believe showing Stephanie training. Cobblepot looking in the mirror saying, like, oh, we'll see how all this turns out. Eiko is bleeding on the streets. And finally, we get one final thing of Selena coming up back to her penthouse, but instead of Black Mask waiting there, it's Antonia. And Antonia's like, No wonder we couldn't find you whenever we were looking for you. And she's like, ah, crap, I'm Cap. Okay, I didn't, hi, sorry, I didn't ever mean this to be a secret from you. I promise it was never anything against the family. I just wanted to keep this part separate from you. And Antonia's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, sure, whatever. Sounds good to me. And, I assume Ward already knows. And she's like, yeah, I didn't tell him. He just found out on his own. I was like, all right, fair enough. And she's like, okay, but like, are we cool? Are we good? And she's like, yeah, of course we're cool. Yeah, I'll keep everyone away from the roof for a while so that you don't have to worry. And she's like, oh, wait, but like you came up to the penthouse looking for me. What did you need? And she's like, oh, nothing important. And, it's given that little thing of, is she going to go through with Penguin's plan? But then the very last thing we get is Aiko, after being shot off the roof. Turns out she was dragged into a sewer by Killer Croc. What that's going to do, who knows? But Croc was working in the casino with Catwoman. That was only an Eternal, so should be on good standing. I don't see any reason why not. It's another solid issue, but again, it just doesn't read well week to week. I think it is written for the trade. It does a lot better if you're able to keep all these moving parts in mind, all these different threads of what's going on. But it is still good. It is still a very well-written book. So I think I'm going to say that this one is I'll say a 7. I guess I just am looking for the end goal. I don't quite know where we're moving towards besides the destruction of Black Mask as a threat, which it doesn't feel like we're making any strides towards at all. It's just tiny little picking away at steps, which is fine if you got a plan for a big run, but like I don't feel like when I finish this trade that I'm going to have a ending. It's just going to be check out the next trade, because this is not something that's going to complete any satisfying things until we get to the end. All-Star Section 8, number 3, written by Garth Ennis, art by John McCree. So last issue, it was a whole thing of trying to get Green Lantern to join the team. That's done with. But the thing that carried over was that Bueno Excelente was spying on Guts, who, as a reminder, is a large pile of organs in the bathroom, and then his honor is challenged by some unseen foe who apparently cares much more for Guts. We open up on that story where, speaking in very like old-timey eloquent English, like avast ye, you beast, how dare the honor of this fair maiden, blah blah blah. Turns out the thing that has such a crush on Guts is a tapeworm by the name of Sir Percival Orifice, Tape of the Worm, that has been living inside of Guts because it is a pile of organs. And he's like, oh, you come and you stare at this woman. Would you be willing to fight for her honor, her beauty, all of that? What would you do? And he basically just challenges Bueno Excelente to a duel for Guts's hand. Outside, in the bar, Martian Manhunter has shown up, and he enthusiastically tells Six-Pack and the rest of the All-Star Section 8, hey, I'm in. I would be honored to join your team. You are a group of outsiders and misfits, and I am yet another lost soul who I feel that I can have a camaraderie here. And there's a running gag where one of the guys, I literally couldn't tell you who, it says that Martian Manhunter has a smell about him, like rotten eggs or something. It goes on for a while, but Six-Pack is like, oh, hey, wow, that's awesome. Like, how have you heard of us? And apparently up in the Watchtower, everyone's talking about All-Star Section 8. None of it good. All of them are like, oh, yeah, no, they're the worst. You're no way you're ever going to catch me on that team. That's absolutely not going to happen. Batman's trying to call about the parking ticket he got back in issue 1, and he's not getting through to anybody. And we see that because Six-Pack hears that the Justice League's all talking about it, he's like, wow, maybe we'll be able to get someone who's really A-list. And Martian Manhunter's like, yeah, I'm right here. It's me. And he's like, right, but someone who's like really A-list. And Martian Manhunter goes, uh-huh. Yeah, welcome to the team, Martian Manhunter. Thanks. Great to have you. So they turn over to Bator to give them all shots. Beator, for some reason, is doing a German thing. He literally does the salute. They're doing a bit where Beator may have been an old demon of Mars that caused like a lot of suffering, and now he's like just this bar owner, but Martian Manhunter calls him out like, you do seem awfully similar, and he just keeps speaking German. So we cut back over to the bathroom where Tapeworm is telling Bueno Excelente like, oh, would you be willing to fight me to the death for the hand of this fair maiden? And he says, I will allow you, as being the challenged, to choose the weapons within this duel, the manner of the duel. And Bueno Excelente just smirks and says, Excelente. So we go outside the bar, Six Pack's hurling. Martian Manhunter follows him out and just like, are you good? And he's like, yeah, I'm just making room for more. You know how it is. And Six Pack wants to talk to him just alone here, and he's saying, I've got doubts on this whole hero thing, because I keep on getting this voice in my head, and I'm in this like black void that says that all of this is for nothing, and like we're not going anywhere, and none of this is even like real. Oh, what does that mean, Martian Manhunter? And Manhunter's like, no, all heroes feel that. We all feel that. We hear, all those people calling out to us, and they say horrible things like, and then he just goes on like a vulgar rampage of like all of these insults that he's heard. He's like, oh, they shout, you're a big green da-da-da-da, or da-da-da, go back to Mars, you kid, da-da-da. Like, it's all starred out, and even Six Pack's like, okay, Jesus, I get the idea, please, stop. So at that point, Martian Manhunter's like, hey, look, we're a full team now. If you have doubts, prove it. Let's go out there. Let's find some action. And we get this sequence that seems to be them running out into action, fighting against the like Joker, Lex Luthor, Doomsday, Bizarro, a whole 9 yards, and they're taking them all out with ease. Darkseid gets attacked by Beator and whatever white substance is coming out of him. And obviously it's all a dream sequence, but we see Six Pack's like, yeah, you're right, we can do it, let's do it, let's get out there and we're gonna go to work. And Martian Manhunter says, all right, I gotta hit the head real quick first, so don't worry about it. So we see him trying to go into the men's room. It has an out of order sign on it, so he looks over towards the women's room, which is where the whole thing going on with Bueno Excelente is. Grappler comes up and says, hey, yeah, I'm thinking about strategies. Something that involves me swinging in on my grappling hook, because I'm the grappler. And Martian Manhunter's like, yeah, okay, I gotta go, though. And so he knocks on the door, seeing if he can get into the bathroom, and Grappler specifically says, you don't want to go in there. Turns out that he knows that Bueno and the Tapeworm are having a perv off. And so Martian Manhunter opens the door. He sees something that has a whole bunch of sound effects like slide, grind, grope, poke, lubricate, fondle, envelop, enter, penetrate, cup, inappropriately touch, invade, intrude, and encompass. And then immediately he just starts screaming. He busts out, flies through the roof, straight into space. His eyes cannot unsee whatever it is he saw. And so he's out. We cut over to the Tapeworm guy begging for mercy, saying, oh, I yield, you can take the fair hand of the maiden. And then he gets dragged back into the bathroom stall as you hear Bueno Excelente laughing. And Guts has little hearts around her head. And so we have Six Pack and the rest of the team looking up at the hole in the roof saying like, oh, well, that's just great. Back to square one. And Drill Face, whatever his name is like, yeah, look on the bright side. That smell's gone. Yep, that's an issue. That is an issue of this book that fits in exactly with what the other issues of this book have been. I don't know what to say about it. Like, it's doing stuff. God help me, it's doing stuff. It does feel like there's trying to be a through line with Six Pack and like different heroes talking to him and like him having these doubts and stuff, but like I don't know where we're going with it, and frankly I don't think I care enough. Like all of the other stuff going on in the background is far more, I'm not going to say entertaining, but intriguing at the very least. And if that's going to be the focus of it, then I'm not going to care about Six Pack's crisis of faith or whatever he's got going on. So maybe it'll end up all merging together into one big thing, but like I don't see any way we can turn Beator doing what he's doing, Bueno Excelente doing what he's doing into anything with some sort of emotional resonance. But who knows? I don't even know how to begin rating this. 6. Sure. It's well done for what it's trying to do, but I cannot begin to rate this like subjectively. So 6. Earth 2 Society number 3, written by David H. Wilson, art by Jorge Jimenez. So we keep on bouncing between the here's what's been happening to develop all the stuff in the past and then what's happening currently. The current stuff is that Terry Sloan has stolen the Genesis machine and has activated it, which is going to terraform this planet to basically be 100% Earth rather than alien with Earth-like elements. So we see that Lois Lane, still acting as Red Tornado, now actually a reporter in some extent, is like, oh, yes, I have to check this out, see what's going on, because there's all this lightning, and Terry's just laughing on top of one of the pillars. We see him basically saying, like, yes, I've lifted you up, I have acted as your god or whatever, and now we're hunted by a traitorous enemy, and the faceless enemy will take this world unless I take it first. So we see Power Girl, Red Tornado, and Batman, who is Dick Grayson obviously at this point, come up, and they're like, all right, Terry Sloan is terraforming, what are we going to do? And we see that a bunch of like tendrils are coming out of the ground, attacking some of the cities. There are bubbles that have very clear like giraffes and lions inside of it. So Jimmy Olsen's watching, everyone else is coming in, but then also coming in is Val-Zod. And the moment he shows up, he's like, hey, he's paranoid and out of control. We got to stop him together. And Power Girl turns around and goes, I never want to see you again. And I already told you that. Get out of here. And both Val and Lois are like, Power Girl, we've got bigger things going on here. Can we just calm it down for a second? She's like, you want me to calm down? Fine. And so she just blasts through one of the pillars of this machine and just like, what do you think of that? To which point Val-Zod's just like, all right, is this what we're doing here? You gonna finish this up already? And Red Tornado is like, wait, please, everyone, this isn't... And then all of a sudden, Terry Sloan gets struck by lightning and seemingly is killed. So we cut back to a year prior. The crash landing happens. Lois stumbles out of the wreckage of her ship. She's looking for survivors. One guy's like, I'm surviving, please, I'm trapped under a wreckage. So she pulls it up, and then he's immediately like, oh my god, a robot, get away from me. And all the other survivors start stumbling over like, yeah, you freaking robot, you clanker, get out of here. And just like, they start shooting at her, telling her to fly away, and so she does. Her body is much worse for wear after everything that happened, but as she flies up, she's like, I miss my dad, I miss my city, I miss my body, I miss my husband, everything sucks, and I can't get away from this. And so she finally just stops flying, she collapses back down to the earth, and in front of her appears Alan Scott, who's like, Lois Lane, hey, you good? And she's like, no, I'm not good. And he's like, all right, let me heal up your body. And so he fixes whatever worse for wear she had after the crash. And she's like, Alan, where are we? What's going on? He's like, I am no longer Alan. I am the Green. I am now this planet, and this planet is our home. And she's like, oh, as long as I'm in this body, I'll never be home. And he's like, that's not true. You can make home anywhere. Home's where the heart is and all that stuff. And she's like, if that's true, why don't you take off that ring and like make your home here? And he's like, bye. And then he just leaves. So we then cut over to everyone, all the heroes are making their peace with their new homes. Flash is in Midwest City. Neotropolis is being terraformed or created by Power Girl and Val-Zod. Erebus is apparently got cults worshipping Jimmy Olsen. Sure. And we see out in the wilderness, Red Tornado comes across Kendra, Hawkgirl, and she's like, screw those cities, I'm out here exploring, I want to know more about this planet, what's going on, what are you doing out here, Lois? And she's like, I don't know, this body was made for war, but now there's no more war and people are afraid of it. And she's like, okay, well, maybe stop running away and choose something to run towards, and if they don't like it, don't take no for an answer. And she's like, yeah, all right, fair enough. So she goes back into Midwest City and she sees that there's a mother and daughter who have put up a missing poster for the father of the family, and there's tons of missing posters. There's literally hundreds of them all over the place as people are trying to figure out what happened after the crash and all that. But We see Lois takes that to heart, remembers it, and as she's flying around Neotropolis one day, she comes across the father. And she's like, oh, Mr. Winslow. And he's like, yeah, do I know you? And she's like, nope, but I know your daughter and your wife. And she reunites them, and they're all so happy. And Lois is just like, yeah, my eyes are cameras, so it's no big deal. I just, that's weird. I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. You probably think I'm a freak now. And they're like, no, you literally saved our family. You reunited us. Like, do you want clothes? The wife's got clothes. You can have some clothes. And she's like, I would like clothes. Thank you very much. So back in the modern day, we see that because Power Girl or the lightning bolt, whatever it was, blasted and started messing with the tower, all of the normal Earth creatures are now being corrupted and turned into monsters. So they have to put them down as they're coming out of their big, like, sack things. And then literally, like, Lois Lane is like, it's getting out of control. And Alan just walks in, grows to supersized, and says, no. And he bubbles up the whole city and says, it's contained. It won't terraform anything else anymore. And so everyone else who's inside the bubble is like, okay, all right, it's taken care of. Where is everyone? Find Terry. What happened to him? And as they race around, Flash realizes that somebody took the source vault. Someone took the thing that makes the genetic engine, Genesis machine or whatever, run. And they come across Terry Sloan's body in the rubble. And Lois is like, Terry Sloan has been assassinated. The source vault is gone. And until we find out who did it, all of our society is in jeopardy. Dun, dun, dun. All right. Here's the thing. First two issues I felt were not great. And that is because it felt like we were dropped in with nothing. I realize now in this third issue, to an extent that was intentional, because the mystery, the actual point of the arc, is not Terry Sloan has gone crazy and he's pulling up the Genesis engine or whatever it's called. The point of the arc is someone wanted Terry Sloan dead, and we have to find out who it is in order to save the planet. And that's fine. That's okay. But that's the sort of thing I need at the end of issue 1, not at the end of issue 3. Because all I'm doing is going through 2 full issues of how much am I supposed to be invested here? How much should I really be caring about this Terry Sloan firing up the engine? Because if this were to have gone on the whole 6 issues of heroes going around saying, like, we have to stop the engine. Someone find Alan Scott. Where's he at? Da-da-da, all that stuff up until issue 6. I think it's a horrible arc. I feel like that's just 100% like action turned to 11 the whole time, and there's no, like, it's just an excuse of action running in the background so we can have these flashbacks going on and showing how people have adapted to this new planet. But now at the end of issue 3, we're saying, no, actually, the point of it is somebody killed Terry Sloan and we need to find out who that is. Now it's turned into this, like, larger mystery where we can explore the world, but you need to do that at the end of issue 1. You can't put that at the end of issue 3 because it leads me to think you're doing the former for 3 issues. So yeah, it's not the best pacing, I guess, is what I'm really trying to say there. But art-wise, it's still good. I do like the backstories we're getting for each of these characters. There's still the mystery of, like, Power Girl and Val Zod. What happened there? So I've got intrigue. It's just not paced well. So I'm going to say this is a 6.5 for me. But I'm hopeful it can get better. And that's it. That is all the comics that were put out by DC Comics this August 12th, 2015. And yeah, I really don't have anything else more to add. Like I said, I'm ending this one much earlier in the day than I usually would. I do have things to do. It's not like my day's completely clear, but it's just so, it's the sort of thing where when you're a kid and you go into school when it's not a school day, it just feels wrong. You just feel this, like, this isn't right. Something's not good. Like, I don't know why, but just doesn't feel right. It's the same thing here. I'm going to press finish recording. I'm going to press the stop button, and then I'm going to go do things. This is absolutely an unrelatable problem. I understand that you as the audience, you're sitting there like, oh my God, who cares? Just read the next week's books. I get that, but, like, shut up, it's my show. So, next week, what do we have? Well, we've only got 12 comics coming out, and I'll go ahead and tell you what they are in alphabetical order. That is Bizarro, Black Canary, Dr. Fate, Doomed, Green Lantern, The Lost Army, Harley Quinn / Power Girl, Justice League, Martian Manhunter, Robin Son of Batman, Secret Six, Superman / Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman. So all of that can be viewed next week's episode. But if you have any comments on any of the comics that I talked about this week, last week, any week at all, you can go ahead and put those down in the comments down beneath this YouTube video if that's how you're watching. But if you are listening via different means, you can go ahead and hit us up on one of our numerous platforms that we have a place to be at. We have a subreddit, a Discord, a Patreon. All of those things are checked semi-regularly at the very least, and we will get back to you toot sweet. But yeah. That really is the episode. So I'll go figure out what I'm going to do with my day. However it is you're listening to this, I hope that you enjoyed it. Give it a thumbs up or 5 stars or whatever it is you do. You crazy kids in your podcast listening apps with your true crime documentaries and your, I don't know, what other podcasts are popular amongst people who are not listening to just conspiracy ones? Food? I feel like food would be a thing. You foodies. Give us 5 stars. Why not? Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.